This week's episode is sponsored by Change. Change is the #1 mentoring programme that teaches you e-commerce from scratch. Change has a real community with real results. I have been working with Ryan for many years now and have attended many of his events and retreats across the world and got to meet members and the amazing community of like-minded people. Ryan works with a lot of big names in the business world, helping them build online businesses and e-commerce. Change offers personal one-on-one support, no experience needed, but like anything, this takes time and is not a get-rich-quick scheme. If you put the work in, you will get the results. E-commerce and online shopping is getting bigger and bigger. This is a great opportunity for anyone that is looking for financial freedom. For more information, go follow Ryan on Instagram at RyanJB, and he will guide you through the steps to help you get started and build a successful online business. You can now follow me on all my social media platforms to find out who my latest guest will be. And don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you're notified for when my next podcast goes live. And boom, we're on. And today's guest, we've got Adam Davies. Adam, how are we?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
Ex-copper, sacked, misconduct, some daft videos, some serious ones. Police were saying you were involved in crime, giving criminals the heads up, like mad stuff. The perfect copper for a criminal, if I'm honest. But you're here to kind of expose your truth, because the media, we know what the media does. It can portray people as really bad individuals, but you're here to tell your side of the tale, which is important. First and foremost, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before we get into all the madness though, I always like to go back to the start with my guests, get more of a bit of understanding about you, where you grew up and how it all began.
Yeah, so I grew up in a place called Farnborough in Hampshire. Quite a nice-ish area. I mean, it depends on obviously whereabouts in the place you're from, but I suppose it's where you are from anywhere, isn't it? Family-wise, mum, dad, brother, sister, quite a traditional family. Never really had any sort of issues of upbringing. I'd be lying if I said I did. You know, I was quite good. Schoolwork was good. You know, I used to muck about a bit at school, but I'd always do my work. So it was never really like, I was never rude to teachers or anything like that. It was just, you know, just being a kid really, just, you know, doing that. And so my mum was a swimming teacher. My dad was a police officer. So I suppose it was always really destined that was where I was going to end up. And yeah, just very sporty kid. Did gymnastics, you know, competed at quite a high level internationally. Rugby, I mean, golf, football, anything you can think of, I put myself to it, and I love sports, and that was the reason why, you know, I just found myself busy all the time when I was a kid growing up.
So gymnastics, bro, because obviously you've got the build, the neck, the arms are massive.
Yeah, gymnastics was something that I got into from a very early age. My mum took me to one of these preschool classes, if you like. You know, I think I was 3 years old, and the coach at the time, she said, you keep him in gymnastics, he's going to be very good. And, you know, she wasn't wrong, because, you know, I had quite a successful career. I was never at the very top of the game. You know, I was always in and around it. You know, I went to British championships and stuff like that. And I'd always be in and around the medals, but I wouldn't always medal until I reached, I think I was about 15. I think I got my first British medal, British title on vault. And just from that point onwards, you know, just carried on. When I was 15, I went to the European Championships for Great Britain. And that was the only time I competed for Great Britain. But, you know, at least I can say I did it. So
how do you get the neck so strong?
Oh, it's just the way the body works, isn't it? You know, a lot of gymnastics is a lot of, you know, body strength, if anything. And I think, to be honest with you, I think my neck strength is probably more from the bodybuilding and stuff like that I've done post gymnastics career, really.
How hard is the gymnastics? Because it's a very short-lived career. It's like early 20s, people retire, no?
Yeah, I retired at 17. But for me, it was always, I wanted to get to a point where I was happy or satisfied that I could retire. And after that competition that I went to the European Championships, I thought, you know what, now's the time. I want to leave on a high. I don't want to leave on a low. So I felt like that's why I decided that the best time to leave would be after I'd had that massive high. I didn't think I'd ever get that high again. It's a bit like a drug, you know. I just didn't think I was going to ever get that kind of adrenaline rush ever again. So
the British have seemed to have done well over the last sort of 15 years with
gymnastics, the Americans in China were always at the forefront, but the British seem to have winning golds and winning silvers.
We've got a really strong team these days. You know, even before I think 2012 Olympics, we got a bronze medal, and ever since then it's just carried on, just climbing. Even the women as well. You know, men's and women's GB teams, just unbelievable at the moment. You got all these young gymnasts that are coming through, and I think years and years ago, you always had the certified gymnasts that were always going to be prolonging their careers with the fact that they were so good and there was no one coming close to them. But we have all these kids now that are on their way up, and they're pushing on the door, they're knocking on the door. And you know, some of these guys are, like, for their ages, are absolutely incredible. There's a couple of clubs that stand out the most, but some of these kids that are coming up are just ridiculous, and I don't think it's long before we end up really competing.
How damaging is it to the body though?
I mean, as you can tell, I'm only 5 foot. I mean, everyone else would be able to tell, but you can tell I'm only 5'6". So, you know, it's known to stunt your growth. But I think for me, I've gone back.
Is it?
Yeah, it's known for stunting
I
your
always
growth.
thought it was just if you were a bit smaller, it was a perfect sport for you.
Yeah, it's more there. To be fair, there has been, you know, tall gymnasts. Christian Thomas is one of them. You know, he was quite tall. You know, he must have been pushing 5'11", 6 foot maybe. He was really tall, but such a successful gymnast and really good in this field. You know, and I think for me, I've gone back to it now. So I went back, I retired for like 13 years and went back to it a few years ago. And my back, my knees, everything, you know, I can't train more than 1 day a week, because if I do any more than 1 day a week, I'm in bed for 4 days. I can't get out of bed. So it is tough on the body.
I think it's so straining on the body. Do you think it's more damaging than good?
It's difficult to say. I think it probably is. But the way I look at it is, for me personally, the reason I went, and obviously when I went back to it, I thought to myself, do you know what? If I've only got a couple of years left of this, yeah, I might be hurting, but I'll do it for as long as I can. And when I first started posting content to social media, you know, it's just started growing and growing and growing. But you know, you always have the haters, don't you? Have the trolls and stuff like that, and people saying to me, you know, your legs, your knees are gonna not, you know, they're not gonna forgive you when you're older. But I sort of looked at it, well, actually, maybe I'm gonna get to that point, but at least I can say I enjoyed it while I could do it.
It must be one of the most straining sports in the world. Even like rugby, it's not that damaging. Yes, it's tough, but I'd imagine with the body and the way it gets put through with the tests and the pressure and the stress, it must be pretty damaging mentally as well, gymnastics, because it's very slim as well. One mistake and you fucked it.
Well, I broke my wrist when I was, I think, 14 years old, and that hit me hard, because I was at the point where I was starting to compete at quite a decent level, and I was going around the bar, and my wrist guard got stuck, and that was just a malfunction. That there was equipment malfunction. There's nothing I could do about it, and I carried on going around, and it got to the point where my wrist was, you know, sort of upside down. Bone had come out the arm, and you know, that was it. Broken in 2 places, fractured and dislocated, and I was told by the doctor that or the physio, that I'd never ever do gymnastics again. And I think it was only about 6 months later, I ended up winning the Southern Championships, and then went back to compete in the British Championships the year after. And you know, I think that's the thing is, yes, it is damaging on the body, but I think your body is so used to fixing itself that actually any other person or any other, you know, normal member of the public that doesn't do gymnastics, I suppose, would probably struggle to come back from an injury like that. But I feel like as a gymnast, it probably was just ingrained in my body that actually I could get back into it from that, despite the horrific injury.
You see the bodies on like the NFL players and stuff, they're ripped, but I think gymnast is probably the more natural thing to come to like a bodybuilder's body.
Yeah.
Naturally,
Yeah.
with the physique, the legs, the back, the arms, like everything's popping.
Oh, me, when I was younger, like everyone used to comment on my physique, or my mum's friends, my dad's friends, you know, they'd say, I used to give my dad's friends chin-up competitions when they used to come around for, you know, barbecues and stuff. We had a little bar on the kitchen, as you know, some households do, and used to give chin-up competitions. And I must have been 8, 9 years old, and I was beating some of these fully grown men, but just because that's just the strength that the gymnastics gives you. It's crazy.
It's fascinating. I watch it when it's in the Olympics, the 100 metres. I like the swimming as well, because it intrigues me how people can twirl around like that, and I think, what the fuck, like a human body can do that. The ice skating as well, when you see them doing mad shit, like it's mad to see people at the peak of their powers and giving their whole life to their craft. Like the Olympics it's one of the best. It must be up there with the World Cup, if not beyond it, because everybody can watch something that they enjoy, you know. So it is fascinating to see what people can do with the body. Is there many drug cheats with gymnasts? There doesn't seem to be many get exposed.
No, there's not really. There's not. I mean, I know there was a little bit, not gymnastics, but there was a little bit with the whole Russian Federation, wasn't there, and stuff like that, that obviously caused the whole, you know, Olympic blackout, if you like. You know, they weren't allowed to compete. But you don't hear about it much. I mean, I certainly can't think of anything off the top of my head that screams out at me. So I don't think it is, no, because I don't know if you'd even really benefit from it, really.
No big scandals.
Yeah, exactly.
I was surprised at Lance Armstrong.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
fucking cyclist, man. You don't know.
No.
And boxers, and you do get surprised, and you think, like, why would you test the waters? You know.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the scandal. Did you watch the documentary about the American doctor?
Yeah,
the gymnast team.
yeah.
Like, that was fucking wild. What he was doing and how he got away with it for so long.
Yeah,
like it was a mad. That was a mad documentary. That he got 100 odd years or 200 odd years. He got a mad life sentence. Him.
I know of someone who, you know, a coach that went for a similar thing, but I won't speak about it because I don't really want to give him the airtime. But yeah, he's currently sat in prison at the moment for awful stuff. Awful stuff. Someone that was very well respected in the community as well. But
sad, that, innit?
It is, yeah.
But it's the kids who end up with a life sentence. So what happens after gymnasting?
After gymnastics, I think the thing is with my dad being a copper, you know, I used to remember coming home from school and I'd sit down and I'd wait for him to come home from work and I'd just sit there, and when he'd get home and I just listen to his stories, and back then policing was crime only. You know, you didn't deal with all the mental health stuff that you deal with now. You wouldn't sit there and babysit people constantly in custody or at hospital. It was very much you go out, you deal with crime, you come home. And that was what it was like. I used to be in awe. Like, my dad was my hero, you know, just listening to these stories and just being like, God, I want to do that when I'm older. Like, that sounds wicked, you know? And yeah, so everything I did throughout school was always to progress or to, you know, sort myself into a place where I could then join the police. So, you know, I did things like I worked on the doors for a little bit, you know, when I came out of college. You know, during college, I was doing uniform public services courses. So it was always going down that route. And yeah, I worked the door for a couple of years, and, you know, my dad was trying to talk me out of the police, and he was trying to say to me, you know, it's not the same as what it used to be. And my response was, well, I don't know what it used to be like, because you're talking from your perspective. I don't know any different. So me going in, I wouldn't know what it used to be like. You know, I only know what you told me. So, you know, I think I was always destined to go in the police. It's a bit of a family business. You know, my dad was in, he was quite high rank when he retired a couple of months ago. I was in as an officer. My brother's still now is doing a police staff role. You know, my brother's partner's in. Like, it was a bit of a family business, really. My mum always wanted to join, but she never could because of the height restrictions when she was, you know, younger. So.
You're the one that gets sacked, bro, all over the media, the news. You must be the golden child of the family, bro. You must be a laugh at Christmas parties now, bro.
Honestly.
Everybody else is flying high, worked through the ranks, retired peacefully. Yeah. You've been on the job a few years.
Honestly.
I'm laughing because I've seen some of the stuff that you got done with. Mm-hmm. And for me, I find it funny. But that's me. I'm not a copper. I'm not serious that way. But what sort of copper was your dad?
He did quite a bit. So he started off in response. And it was a bit different back then. You know, you go to places like Hendon and you do your training with other forces, and then at the end of it, you all then come away. But my training was all done in-house. But my dad, like, he was a response copper for such a long time, and then he went to neighbourhoods as he started working his way up the ranks. He was in custody for a little bit as a custody sergeant, booking people in, and then he went through the higher ranks, and then he became a neighbourhood inspector, and then he became a custody inspector. So he sort of jumped between the three, you know, response, custody, and neighbourhoods. Well respected in the police. A lot of people liked him, and I think that was one of the things. And when I came in, the one thing he said to me, which will make you laugh, is, "I've got a name for myself here. You know, people know who I am. They're going to know you're my son. Do not bring my name into disrepute. That's all I ask from you." And what did I do? 4 years down the line, that's exactly what happened. So that was the biggest worry. The biggest worry was that he was never going to forgive me. And that I remember sitting in that cell thinking, I've done it. Like, he's not going to talk to me ever again. But luckily, you know, I'm his son, and I think he actually, after hearing what had actually happened, I think he was, you know, he was a bit reluctant, but I think he did eventually come around in the end, which I was really grateful for.
Yeah, good. So what was it like joining the coppers then? How old were you?
So I joined, I took a police staff role first of all. So I actually started off in 2015. I tried to join British Transport Police initially because you didn't need a driving license. I didn't have a driving license at the time. I had a motorbike. So you got to have a driving license, but British Transport Police were taking officers who didn't have a driving license. So I tried to apply for that, got pushed back, and I thought, oh, it's not worth it now. I'll leave it a couple of years. So that's when I got into the door work and stuff like that. And then after the door work was then the point where I was like, right, I want to get into this now. I'd done a couple of little jobs, and, you know, I worked at a cash centre, I worked at a fish and chip shop, you know, I worked on the door, I worked behind a bar, like all these different jobs, but I wasn't getting any satisfaction from any of this, you know. So I ended up, my dad helped me join the force that he worked for. I went in there as a detention officer. So that is somebody that when you get booked into custody, they're there for your welfare, primarily for your welfare, and that's it. You know, giving the prisoners teas, coffees, food, booking them into custody, searching them, doing their fingerprints, taking their DNA, taking their photographs, all that kind of stuff. So I did that for like 19 months. But whilst you're training to do that, or whilst you want to, if you want to progress and become a police officer, you have to go through what's called, at the time you had to go through what's called a CKP, which I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but I think it is to do with the College of Policing, and it's like a knowledge test of like law and legislation and stuff like that. And you can do it either in a classroom or you can do it as coursework. And I did it in coursework because I knew that I could do it whilst I was working. So night shifts, I'd have the sergeants helping me, because you're the team of detention officers, you have a couple of sergeants with you as well. And I have the sergeants helping me with it. And I passed that, and I was only, civilian staff for 19 months in custody before I ended up joining up. And I mean, the training itself, it's not too difficult, but it's a lot of information to take in. And, you're very, very close with the group that you're with. I think my group was quite a small intake. Usually you get an intake of about 30 to 40. My intake was, I think, 13, 14. I think 2 or 3 people dropped out of that. So it went down to, almost 10, 11 people just in one intake, which means that you can bond a lot easier. You go out on the weekend and you sort of get to know your colleagues and stuff like that. And, the training, I really enjoyed the training phase. I was really fortunate. I had some really, really great officers who were, teachers or officers that were doing a teaching role. And I think I was very fortunate to have that, because I had a really, really good training phase.
So you started off booking people in?
Yep.
Is that just standing at the front desk, taking their details?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, booking them in.
What sort of sites are you seeing then? Because a lot of people are damaged now with like drink and spice and so many different drugs.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was just people, a lot of drunks, fights, it's a lot of stupid shit. But nowadays it's changed days. Did you see a lot of damaged people?
Yeah, you see all sorts of different people, all sorts of walks of life coming into custody, because essentially what you are is a prison officer, but for the police. You're working in custody, and you get the officers bringing the people that have been arrested in, and they're getting booked in, and the officer will relay exactly what it is they've been arrested for, and you're sitting there. And sometimes I've booked in all sorts of different people. I booked in people for crimes like as small as criminal damage and theft. I say small, but crimes that aren't carrying a big sentence, all the way to booking someone in for a terrorism offence. It's crazy just that you never know who's going to walk through that door, but you do always see the same faces quite a lot of the time as well. But
who's the oldest?
The oldest person that I've ever booked in?
Yeah.
I'm going to say probably in their 90s, and that would have been for child offences.
Oh.
Yeah, it's quite. A lot of it comes back historically. So you can get these people that come in that actually committed the offences when they were, working as a teacher or something like that. But actually, it doesn't come out until years and years down the line. So you're booking them in for these kind of things that are much, much later on in life.
Yeah, I seen a man on the news just a few weeks ago. He'd done a murder like 30, 40 years ago, and he was in his 80s or 70s, and they're jailing him in the kitchen. Fair play. What are these men like when you're having to book in? Do you know their charges when you're booking them in?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people get took for questioning. I've been took for questioning, then you get took to the front desk and charged or whatever, so you'll know what they're getting charged for. What's it like when like paedophiles and the nonces come in?
Well, when they come in initially, you always make sure that there's no one around. You don't want to have any other prisoners that are around that can be listening into what they're there for. So usually you'll try and clear the custody area so that you can make sure that it is a sterile area, because some of these things, you've got to remember, these people being brought in are not guilty until they've gone through the process, the custody process.
Yeah.
So if you then have someone who actually genuinely is innocent that comes in, and there's an officer stood there saying that this person's been brought in for sexual activity with a child, for example, you've got these other people that are going to look at that person, and that's damaging for them if they haven't done it. If they've done it, then it's a bit different. But this is why when they get charged, it's very, very different, because when they're being charged, there's almost, people might look at this and be like, yeah, that's wrong though, but there's almost an element of compassion, because you have to show compassion to them, because again, like you said, yes, they've been charged through the police system, but they haven't gone through the court procedure yet. And we all know that you can go to trial and you can be found not guilty at trial. So I think until that whole court process, you've still got to treat people in a certain type of way, which is very difficult at times. And I'll be being honest, I'd be wrong if I was sitting here saying that I've found it easy, because you can't find it easy. There's some characters that, and some of them just don't know what they've done wrong either. Honestly, some of the people that you get in for like the serious crimes like rape and serious GBHs, or any sex offence, stalking offences, those kind of things, like honestly, these people just don't know what they've done wrong. But it's almost like, especially if you get the same people coming in over and over again, you can't say that they're guilty, but in your head you're thinking, well, you're always in it. There's a high chance that you probably have done that, but it's up to the police to find out if that's the case. But some of them just, rude, argumentative, some of the stuff that they come out with is disgusting. It really is.
Do you see by their presence as well that there's something off? When you see these kind of stings with like the paedophiles and the kind of, half them ain't even there. They're like childlike themselves. They're like kind of disabilities. Like that, I feel as if they could be easily manipulated as well, some of these people. But do you ever get ones when you look at them and you look at the charges and think, I would never have thought you?
Yeah, we had a guy come in, and this is one that always stuck with me. There was a guy that came in, and he was in for, I think I was very, very young in service, if you like. I'd been there for, you know, a matter of months, and they booked this guy into custody. I booked this guy into custody, and I heard the circumstances, and it was that he had had sexual intercourse with his 2-year-old child, or was alleged to have had sexual intercourse with his 2-year-old child. And, you know, we have to remain impartial in custody because we are there for their welfare. But that does make you sit back and go, fucking hell, like, I have to be nice to you. I have to look after you because I'm here for your welfare, regardless of whether you've done it or not, or whether it's not up to me to say whether you've done it or not, because I'm just there for your welfare. But it is so difficult to try and switch off and be a professional in those circumstances. And I always did that because I had to do it because it's my job. Yeah, I couldn't sit there and treat people differently. But I have seen people who have turned around before and been like, I can't go and deal with that person, because that's just the way that it is, unfortunately. Some people have, you know, trauma in their lives where they can't face up to these kind of people. And, you know, I like to think that I used to be all right to kind of just put it to the back of my mind and put the job first in terms of, you know, go and look after their welfare. And actually, you know, what you got to remember is they've just been caught, you know, or they've been brought in for something as horrific as it is. You know, you got to remember that they're probably struggling in the cell as well, as wrong or as right as it is. You know, you've got to be there for their welfare because that's your primary role.
How big a percentage, though, of these guys that are actually innocent? Like you say, it's innocent to proven guilt. Everybody deserves a fair trial. But how much of the percentage would you say that they actually do get convicted? It must be pretty high.
I couldn't tell you exactly, you know, complete stats. But, you know, when they go through a court process, for example, you know, a lot of people get charged from the police, you know, because you only have to have a charging threshold. You know, you have to convince the CPS that actually there's enough here to take it to a trial. There's enough for at least for a case to answer for. So you end up going to this court process or they go to this court process and, you know, they might be found not guilty there, but I don't know how many of them get across the line. I really don't. I couldn't give you those stats, unfortunately.
So what happens then after the sort of booking people in?
Yeah. So I then joined up and went through the process of training. Yeah.
How long's training?
12 weeks, I believe. So you do 11 weeks and then you have like a 4-day week off. And then, or 4 days off. And then what they do in the force that I worked for is you'd get like a bit like a placement, a work placement. So you'd go and work in the local community. So mine, for example, I worked at a place in Godalming in Surrey, which was a specialist autism epilepsy home for children. And they get you to go and do that and be sort of around, you know, the public and do your community field just for like a couple of days, just to kind of get you to like ease you into like probably talking to people and people that obviously have extra additional needs and things like that, to try and get you to maybe work into the community a little bit and just to, you know, maybe shock you a little bit into, you know, you've got to be a professional. This is what you've got to do now. You know, you've got to treat people with respect, blah, blah, blah. You've got to, you know, do all this, you know, it's difficult. Everyone is different, you know, and you got to learn how to speak to certain people. And there were some people that I trained with that didn't know how to speak to different people. You know, you speak to someone exactly the same as you speak to, you know, anyone else. And you got to learn to change, because you have people that are going to come at you aggressively. You have people that are going to be a little old lady who's just had her handbag robbed. You know, you got to know how to speak to certain people, because that could be the difference between you getting assaulted and not getting assaulted.
You must have smashed the fitness part then.
Fitness part's actually quite funny, because the fitness test itself at the time was only about 5.4 on the bleep tests, which
fucking
is nothing, exactly. Yeah. But still, you were told when you joined up, if you didn't pass that bleep test, you couldn't get in, which was the case. But once you're in, if you can't pass that fitness test, okay, come back and do it another time. And this is why we're seeing like so many things where like unfit, like you carrying 20 kilograms of, or almost 20 kilograms of body armor when you're running around and stuff. And God, and I was quite fit at the time, you know, I was obviously just come out of the gymnastics and stuff like that. And chasing, you know, you get out of a car and chase after someone, and they've always got a head start because you've got all this kit attached to you. And yeah, it's crazy. It really is. But
that's a concern for me. Like, you see the Spanish, the Russians, they're all strong, fit men. Mm-hmm. You ain't fucking with them. Mm-hmm. You're intimidated straight away.
Yep.
People here just fight the coppers because they're fucking fat, they're lazy, they're not going to catch you. Mm. Like, the criminals have got one up on the coppers now. There's a lot of fit coppers out there as well, and there's a lot of great coppers.
There is.
You know, there's so many, but there's not enough, especially with the crimes and stuff that's happening in the UK. There's got to be further, but I just don't even know if people want to join the coppers anymore, so they're taking anyone. But there should be further checks. There should be fit and healthy. If you're a bit overweight or if you're a bit sloppy, then put you on a certain field. You shouldn't be on the beat because you ain't catching no one. I think anyway, like when I look at the other coppers around the world, we're far behind. I think the British coppers are far behind.
Yeah, we are. I remember I was out in Spain last year in Tenerife, and I remember I was on the electric scooters because you can hire them out there, and I went the wrong way, and this Spanish copper just stood in front of me, put his hand up, and I was like, fucking hell, he's massive. I'm not arguing with him. And he went, you can't be on the pavement. I was like, I'll get on the road. You know, you're not arguing with them, but over here,
Take
and
the scooter.
yeah, but I think social media plays a massive part in that as well. I think people are filming coppers for attention, likes, and just attention on social media. I think that it's got to the point now where we're so, as officers, they are so, I couldn't say this at the time because obviously, you have to be politically correct, but I think it's very obvious now that officers have to be so careful about what they say to certain people. I mean, I was listening to the podcast you had on where you had the ex-copper that got sacked for swearing at the kid with a knife.
Yeah, that's shocking.
And it is that I mean, that shocks me. I've seen people swear. I mean, firearms officers, you see all these all the time on body cam where, they're screaming, get on the fucking floor, show me your fucking hands. Well, that's no different, really, is it? And
he should have never have get sacked.
You got to be consistent. You got, honestly,
because back in the day, like in the 90s, where we grew up, like we used to get fucking beat off the coppers. Like I had a couple of scars. I've been beaten, fucking hitting, and I was a wanker as well, so I deserved it. But it was kind of fair game. I'm trying to get away. You're putting up a fight. It's fair game, but there was no reporting. It was just you had a element of respect. It was a big guy called Muscles, and you respected him, but you didn't fuck around with him. I tried to get away for the cunt. But I lost a shoe, and I was rapid. Yeah, but he caught me, and he fucked me up.
But that's it. There's no element of fear in the police anymore. Yeah, it's just not there anymore. Because they're not allowed to be the way they used to be. It's all about people's feelings and stuff now.
So what happens then when you pass? Were you buzzing? Were you excited?
Oh, yeah, over the moon. I was over the moon because it's all I ever wanted. It's all I ever wanted in life was to be a police officer. As sad as that may sound to some people, like that's all I ever wanted to do. And you go through the training phase, you finish your 12 weeks, and then you go out for 10 weeks with a tutor. And I remember my tutor, brilliant guy, was really nice guy. Took me and another girl out from my intake, and the first thing he said to me when I came in, because I was always very aware that people are going to know who my dad is, and I wanted to be my own person. I wanted to make my own legacy. I mean, as we know, I clearly did, but not for the right reasons. But I always wanted to make my own, or make people to look at me in a certain way, to make my own, personality come across to people. And the first thing he said to me when I walked in is, first of all, I just want to say things first. My name's whatever his name is, and he went, I couldn't give a monkey's who your dad is. And I was like, do you know what? I respect that, because I respect it. My dad, he was high up in the police. Everyone in that force knew who he was because of his rank. There's only a certain number of people of that rank that were in the police at the time. So the fact that he could turn around to me and say, I couldn't give a monkey's who your dad is, I thought, you know what, good, because you're going to see me for who I am instead. I get to give my personality across now and show you who I am as a police officer rather than who you expect me to be because of my dad. But yeah, the 10 weeks were fantastic, because I was very lucky. I was very fortunate. You get a lot of tutors now in the police that like to sit in the office, do a lot of paperwork. They don't really like to go out. And I think it's unfair on those new officers that have come fresh out of their training phase. They want to get out there. They want experience. They need to, they need to get streetwise. You need to look and deal with certain things, because after 10 weeks, you're on your own. You don't travel as double crewed unless it's a night shift. You travel single crewed most times. If you get called to a job, you need to know that you're confident in what you're dealing with. And that was the one thing that I did. I pushed myself into that. So I knew that when I had those 10 weeks finished, I was confident. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But my 10 weeks were brilliant. We did all sorts. We did car chases, pursuits. We did foot chases. We dealt with, all sorts of different stuff, Do
you think it was more of a hindrance then because of who your dad was instead of a leg up?
I think so, yeah, because not only did I go to the same force as my dad, but I also went to the same area. So he was very much, not my direct line manager, but he was a line manager within the same department that I worked for, a lot higher up. So I think when you come onto the rota, people know who you are because of your family connections rather than who I was at the start. So I didn't really get a chance to really put myself forward as this is who I am. It was very much, well, oh, you're John's son. And it was like, yeah. Yeah,
do you think because of who you were as well, I'm skipping a bit here, but we'll come back, but do you think it's because of whose son you were is why you went through what you went through, because there was more pressure on you not to give you any leeway?
I don't know really. I don't know if that was the case, because I think, like I said, he was, from what I know of, he was quite well respected, you know, and the reason that I got myself into the position I did was because of my own wrong, you know, it's myself. I can't push blame, and that's not what I'm going to do here. I'll talk about it, but I can't push blame. You know, yes, I found myself in a situation. Now, whether that came from a good place or a bad place in terms of the people that investigated me, I have to hold my hands up. I put myself in that position to give them an opportunity to investigate me.
Yeah, but you're very well spoken. You seemed very level headed. Now, listen, it could be an act. You know what I'm saying? We're all great actors, but you seem very well respected. You seem as if you're on it, very switched on. You seem like you would be a good cop. I could be wrong, but so what was your first arrest?
It's really boring, actually. I knew you were going to ask me this question, but it was really boring. I remember I was upstairs in the office, and it was an early shift. It must have been 8 o'clock in the morning. And there was a call over the radio from the control room saying someone's downstairs to hand themselves in for offence. I can't remember what the offences were, but they've handed themselves in for some offences. And then my tutor's called up and said, "Yeah, we'll take that." And he's like, "Adam, you haven't done an arrest yet. You can go and do it." And I thought, I was thought it might be a bit more exciting than this. But it was good because he was a very violent person, or he was known to be quite violent towards police. But because he'd handed himself in, he wasn't violent because it was on his terms, not on our terms. Do you know what I mean? So I went downstairs, you know, I said, "Oh, can I get your name and stuff?" Ran him through the system, saw what he was wanted for on PNC, and arrested him and took him around. I think that helped me because I knew the custody process before, because obviously I worked on the other side of custody, you know, booking the prisoners in. But it was nice that I had someone that was easy to book in, rather than my first one being someone kicking and screaming going in there, because I think that would have been a bit more daunting. But yeah, the second arrest was a bit better, but the first one was...
What was the second?
Second arrest was a burglary, but we caught him in the act. So, you know, we turned up to a burglary, rear window smashed. It turned out there's more than 4 of them, I think, in total, 3 or 4 of them. And yeah, turned up, and there was one still inside. He'd obviously heard us coming, and he'd hidden inside, and we found him on the premises. So, burglary, caught in the act, red-handed.
What's the procedure for that if someone's in the house? How do you go about it? If you got to then go to the door, or do you let them know that you're there? Like, what's the procedure to then catch them?
If you find the premises broken, then 9 times out of 10 you're going to go in, you're going to shout. You know, you're going to be quite bold in the way you're shouting, because you want them to know that you mean business. Because if you go in there going, "Oh, police," they're going to go, "Oh, fucking." But you got to scream it, you know, "Police, we're here." You know, and you've got to be aware of your surroundings, because you don't know if they're carrying weapons. You know, and another thing as well is we didn't know that he was in the house. You know, we turn up, we see a rear smash, untidy search inside the house, and you think, "Oh, they're long gone." But actually, he wasn't. He was hiding in a cupboard. So you've got to be so careful to make sure you're always on guard, because you never know if someone's because he's going to do anything he can to get away. If that means hitting you over the head with a crowbar or whatever, they're going to do that. And we don't hear about it very often, which is, you know, good. But you know, that's never to say it doesn't happen. You know, we've had murders on police officers around, you know, in the UK, you know, and unfortunately more often than not, it's, you know, it's not a nice thing to have to, you know, have to go through, have to deal with. So,
was anybody ever put up a good fight? Was your life ever in danger?
I had a couple, yeah. I think I was only assaulted, and this goes back to what I said earlier about the way that you speak, or knowing how to speak to certain people. You know, I was an officer I was in the force for 7 years, and I was an officer for 4 years, 4.5 years, 5 years, and I was assaulted once properly. I was assaulted once the whole time I was there. But you had the same officers that were getting assaulted week in, week out, and I think it's just the way you speak to people. You know, mine was a guy. He'd smashed up Subway cookie, the cookie, you know, they get the cookie thing in Subway. It was a Saturday night. We were in the town. He smashed up the cookie thing on the side because he wasn't happy with his order. Absolutely coked off his head, and managed to get him down the floor between door staff and about 4 officers. He was big old, you know, rugby lad, big old strong lad. Got him in the back of the van, and the inspector turns around and says, "Anyone searched him?" Fucking everyone's looking around each other going, "Oh fuck, no one searched him." Get him out the van. As he stepped out the van, I've, you know, tried to grab the cuffs, get him to come out the van. As he stepped out the van, he's stepped off. It was obviously at height, and he's leant forward and he smashed the cuffs across the side of my nose like that. And luckily, only just caught me. But I got £200 for that compensation, so that wasn't too bad.
That's it. Does he get done for police assault?
Yeah, 2. He got done for 2 or 3 assault on police. And funny enough, the original thing he was in for, criminal damage, he got thrown out. So had he just come quietly, he would have got away with it.
But that's the thing. Like, if a copper was cheeky to me, I would say, "Who the fuck you talking to?" But they've not got that. Like, you do it when you get a good copper. You know, you get a good copper.
Yeah.
You know, somebody who's all right. He's on a good level.
Yeah.
Obviously, you get the good cop and bad cop kind of act, but you do get genuinely good coppers. You think they're all, "Yeah, do you know what? You're all right. I'm happy to go." But then you do get wankers who try and enforce their power. And you think, who are you fucking talking to? Like, don't forget, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is real life, and you can understand why people get their back up. But the majority of people who hate the police, they're also active. They're also criminals, you know.
That's very true.
And I always say this, but with the coppers, you don't realise what they actually have to go through. The pain, the struggle, the depths, like the PTSD, the things that they see is no difference from a soldier going to war.
My first dead body didn't affect me. My first suicide really affected me. And that was the first time, I think, in the police that I actually took a step back and said, actually, is this what I want to do? And I'll tell you the story, but this was a young Eastern European builder, had a family, 2 young children, 2 and 4, I think they were, 2 young boys. And he came through as a missing person, and we did all the usual stuff we do. We start searching around the area, any friends that have, you know, heard from him or anything like that, nothing at all. And it was 24 hours that he was missing for. And eventually one of the officers had found his car parked in a car park that we knew was a hot spot, unfortunately, for suicide. And we got a couple of dog units, and they ended up finding the body, and he'd killed himself by hanging. And I remember I hadn't seen a suicide yet, so I wanted to prepare myself, because I knew that there'd be a possibility that I could go to one on my own eventually one day. So I'd always throw myself into the deep end, because I knew that it was important to do that, so that, you know, once you've seen it, you haven't got to worry about, you know, everything's different, everyone you go to is different, you know. But I knew that I'd then see it, so I don't have to worry too much next time, because I've seen it already, if that makes sense. And I remember when they found the body, there was a group of us that was stood in where his car was found in the car park, and he was only found about 100 meters away from the car. And he'd been there for a long time, like I said, he'd been there for about 24 hours. And the inspector turned around and said, right, I know we're all due to finish soon, but can I have some volunteers? I just put my hand up straight away, because I was like, I want to be involved. So anyway, we went to the body, and you know, I remember standing there, and they turned around to me and said, can you open a scene log? So I was like, okay, because you got to put a scene on until the CID can come down and determine that it's non-suspicious. You know it's probably likely that it's non-suspicious, but you've always got to make sure just in case. And I remember they then went off, and this is like a you know, an autumn or a winter evening. So, you know, it was only, you know, what, 4:15, but it was starting to get dark. And I remember they're just left with me and this guy in the woods. And I remember just standing there, just staring at him for, God, it must have been 15, 20 minutes until the police came, until my colleagues came back. And I was just, it's going to sound really weird or really, really strange, but I was just mesmerized, because I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And it took me by surprise. And I remember going home that day and speaking to my partner at the time and just being like, God, I've seen something today that I just don't know how to take. And I spoke to a couple of my colleagues the next day, or, you know, a couple of days later, and they all said, look, it gets like that. You know, you see your first one, it's a shock. It's just, and that was all it was. I was just going through shock. But I remember just standing there, just staring there, mesmerized. But it was a sad story. You know, he was a builder. He was late on his rent because he was waiting for a contractor to pay him. It was about 18 to 20 grand, and he just didn't see a way out. And he took his two kids to nursery, and straight from taking his kids to nursery, went and killed himself. And it's just so, honestly, it ripped me apart. But, you know, you've got to try and take yourself away from that, and just realize that it's your job, and you've got to deal with it.
Yeah, leaving the kids though, you know. I hope they've got a mum.
Yeah, they did. But even still, you know, I've got an 8-year-old. I couldn't imagine dropping him off to school, and then it'll get into the point where I drop him off to school and then go, right, I need to go and do this now. And
how frequently are dead bodies when you're in the police force?
Yeah, they're quite frequent. I mean, you get your sudden deaths and stuff where someone's, you know, died over a heart attack, and you've got to go there anyway and make sure it's non-suspicious. You know, you go to every dead body. Usually the ambulance service will call you in and say, can you come and have a look at this? But I've been to, God Christ, I've been to so many. And I used to not mind them towards the end. So I used to get people who'd be given, each get assigned jobs when you come in the morning. You know, they'll call you up when you put yourself available. They'll call you up and they'll say, I've got a job for you. Can you do this? Can you have a look at this job? And people used to get sudden deaths or dead bodies, and they'd be like, oh, Adam, can you swap? And I was like, yeah, go on. I didn't mind, because you build up a bit of a resistance to it eventually. But yeah, I've seen some awful, it didn't really affect me until I left. And I think, you know, we'll come on to mental health in a bit, but at the time it was sort of like I put on a front. And it wasn't until I actually left the police about 3 years after I left, when I was going through all the investigation stuff, that it just hit me one day, and I struggled hard. I had to get a private therapist in the end just to help me get through it.
Tell me this, through the lockdown and shit and COVID, was there more frequent heart attacks? Did you notice any rise?
No, I'd be wrong if I said I did. Not really, no. But then COVID was different, because a lot of COVID deaths, we had to go there wearing full, you know, I can't what you call them, is it hazmat suits, you know, like
Yeah, the
full,
yellow shit.
yeah, the full suit. You have to go there because if it was COVID or deemed COVID related. We went to a couple, don't get me wrong, but you know, I wouldn't say from my experience it was any more than what we were used to, you know.
So no rise. So you had to wear those suits, but you could sit next to each other in a restaurant.
Exactly that, yeah. Funny
Like
that.
that's
Yeah.
it does make me laugh, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's not funny because people believed in it.
Mm-hmm.
People genuinely were scared, and that's the way the world is controlled. It's operated through fear. But when you think about the madness of having to walk into a restaurant with your mask on,
Yeah.
but you can sit down and take your mask off, but yet then this deadly disease will go up and vanish because you've entered with a mask,
Yeah.
but you can sit down, it's not there, but yet you've got the waitress who'll bring you a pint over with her hands, with a mask on. Like it's just beyond me. And people lost loved ones. People couldn't see loved ones dying. Like I seen a photo of like the nurses with a piece of paper at the window, sorry, he's gone. And the family are behind the screen, like newborn babies
Yeah.
couldn't be there. Like, and if I believe it was all a big setup, but if everybody genuinely believed that there should be more of an uproar, you know, what they've done to people, how they've manipulated the masses, and that scares me how fucking thick people are.
Well, one of the offences that I had to plead guilty to was COVID related, and this is why it took me so long to plead guilty to it, because you had the government situation, didn't you, where they were all having a party during COVID, and I was sitting there thinking, well, how am I going through a criminal investigation here for COVID related offences, and yet the government are having parties and nothing's happening from them. Yeah, there was an inquest, but that went a bit quiet, didn't it? We didn't really hear anything about that afterwards. So
Yeah, it's all swept under the carpet because Pfizer have made well over 100 billion.
Yeah.
Now, this is a company that's been working for over 150 years and they've never cured anything. They've got Viagra right enough. Steph will be buzzing with them. Do you know what I'm saying? That's one of their biggest hitters, I guess. But yeah, it's just scary. But again, I'm not a scientist or a doctor, and I could be wrong. So I'm just like to look outside the box.
yeah, of course.
Did you ever go to any car crashes or any other serious stuff?
Yeah, RTCs. I never went to a fatal RTC, because a lot of fatal RTCs, if it's serious enough, it'll be traffic units that will go to it, and you know, the specialist, you know, roads policing team, they'll be the ones that deal with that kind of stuff. But I've been to some horrific car accidents, but luckily people survived, and I've been to you know, people that have been hit by cars. I've been to all sorts of stuff. You know, I've caught, me and a colleague of mine, we caught burglars in the act, you know, about half an hour after they burgled a place with, you know, 15 to 20 replica firearms they had on them, like and 2 samurai swords and stuff. Yeah, I've done. There's been so much stuff. I could sit here and I could tell you, like, and this is the thing, that I did such a lot in such a small, you know, space of time, that this is why I think I struggle even now. Like, you know, I genuinely, and this is going to sound really pathetic, but I genuinely would do anything to go back and be in the police just for a day, just to get that feeling again. Nothing compares to it. It really doesn't.
Yeah, it's mad that. Even though they've done you.
Yeah,
You know?
funny that.
Yeah. So going through it then, and you're seeing all that stuff, did you not realise it was kind of building up like a little itch or something internal where you don't realise it's going to pop?
No, I don't think so, because I think you have your colleagues to lean on a little bit, you know, family and stuff. This is why there's a lot of affairs in the police, because and other sort of emergency services, because you spend more time with your colleagues than you do with your own family. So your colleagues become your family, and this is why, you know, your family, with the greatest respect, my partner at the time didn't really understand. She tried her best to be there, don't get me wrong, but she didn't really understand what I'd seen at work. And it was very much like you try and speak to the people that you work with, because you know they've been through it as well, or they've been through a similar thing. And they used to hold these things. If you had these horrible, you know, jobs that you had to go and deal with, they used to try and get everyone into the office the next day after briefing, and they would get everyone together and they'd get you to speak about it. So there was these little hubs, if you like, that you could do that, or you get the force chaplain would come in and bring like cookies or, you know, donuts or something, and they'd have a conversation with you to try and do that. But you know, there's also all these other, you know, charities like Mind and things like that they also give you free referrals to and stuff like that. So they do try, but I think it's almost like you build up a tolerance to it a little bit, and then one day it just hits you all at once. And I think, you know, I was always at the mind was, you know, I've been doing this for 4 years now, and nothing's, you know, I've not suffered with mental health, so I'll be all right. I'll be fine. That's not going to hit me later down the line. I should be all right. And then, you know, like I said, 3 years after leaving, just one day, bang, and there I was struggling to get out of bed, and, you know, gagging while I was on my way into work, because, you know, I felt like I was going to be sick, but nothing was coming out. It's just, I never understood mental health at first. Okay. And, you know, maybe I took a bit of a dim view when I was working, because the police these days deal with a lot of mental health, and you'll have people that will call up and it'll be the same people over and over again. And you'll hear the name come over the radio and just think, oh, fucking not again. But I think that was just because I'd never been through it myself, that I maybe took that view a little bit. But, you know, I'd be sat there with them, and I'd always do the job to the best of my ability, don't get me wrong, because, you know, mental health kills, you know, we know that. And I wouldn't want to be the reason that, you know, I wouldn't want to turn up and show a lack of empathy and be the reason that someone goes, you know what, fuck this, and takes their own life, because that's not, you know, that's not my job. My job was I had a duty of care. You know, I had to look after these people and make sure they're okay. But, you know, I would sit there sometimes, and in my head I'd be thinking, just look outside. Life's not that bad. But, you know, it wasn't until I went through it myself that I went, fucking hell, this is what these people were feeling all that time ago. And I didn't understand it at all, you know, and it's crazy. I mean, I did a charity in the end, you know, me and two friends, and you're going to think I'm stupid now, but me and two friends, we crawled up Ben Nevis on our hands and knees. I mean, you're Scottish, you know Ben Nevis, we crawled up Ben Nevis on our hands and knees for a men's mental health charity in 2023, and the BBC News took over it because it got that big. And but yeah, that was just because we just wanted to raise awareness for it, because all of us had suffered. You know, that was the point where I was suffering as well. And it was just, we had to do something that would just, I think we ended up raising about $3,500 in the end, but just something that we had to do that would get it out there, and you know, get people to talk more openly about their mental health.
Do you think the police need more things in place to help with the sort of battles and the demons, like you say, with the car crashes and the hangings and all the nasty shit that they see? The same as the veterans, that there shouldn't be any homeless veterans, but I know a lot of coppers struggle with drink and drugs and abuse because of the things that they've seen. Do you think there's more things should be put in place for police officers?
I do. I mean, look, it'd be wrong of me to say that I don't think they try, because I do think they try. But I just think that we live in a generation where, okay, yeah, we're opening up about it more now. But I think, because you've got to remember that it's only recently that especially men have started to open up about their feelings, you know. And I think that we live in a generation now where it's only just starting to happen. Whereas, you know, and the police are trying to catch up with that as well, you know, and other organisations are trying to catch up with that as well, you know, NHS and that kind of stuff. Because I think years ago there didn't need to be a reason for things to be put in place for mental health, because it wasn't that much of a big thing. No one really spoke about it, you know. Whereas now it's just all of a sudden, over the last 10, 15 years, it's just jumped out of nowhere, and everyone's struggling now. You know, everyone's got their struggles in life, and, you know, people are suffering with depression, anxiety, you know, PTSD, all these stuff that they've seen. And, you know, I think that it's just a lot going on that they just can't, there's not enough resources to put into helping people with mental health.
Yeah, the whole world, everybody's struggling with mental health, but sometimes I look at it as a way, we speak about it more than ever, but yet we're struggling most, you know. Sometimes I think, have we just got to buckle up, accept it, and push through it, you know, because I think the more we can speak about it and more we can speak about feelings and emotions, it is a great thing to face things, to adjust it, to say this is how I'm kind of feeling about this matter. But I think the more we speak about the problems, I think it just reinforces it.
Yeah.
And then it just makes us out, okay, I'm fucked up. Instead of going, you know what, fuck it, life goes on. And as sad as it is, but I think back in the day, it was a lot more tougher. You know, I think now we've just got so many distractions that we do just because nobody feels good enough, nobody feels important. We always feel as if it's a constant battle. I can only speak for myself, but I know enough men to know nobody really ever knows what truly goes on in their minds. We still don't even know.
Yeah.
You know, like, if women had a fucking day in our minds, they wouldn't able to handle it. Like, they don't understand the pressures, and the women get pressures as well. And women, I believe, are the source, the centre of the universe. Like, they're amazing the way they carry a child, what they do. But for a man's mentality, what we have to go through on a daily basis, trying to protect our kids, our missus, our family, trying to provide for them, trying to stay a little bit fit, trying to not drink or not take drugs or not fall off the path. Like, there's so much pressures to try and keep your job and keep up with bills. Like, it is a lot, you know, and we always feel as if we should be doing more. Do we believe we're a failure? Am I good enough for my partner? Am I good enough dad? No doubt women feel like that, but I just think with the rise in suicide with men, it's clearly something not right. There's clearly something amiss, you know, and I don't know if it's masculinity, I don't know if it's purpose. I genuinely don't have all the answers, because people take their own lives for so many different reasons. But I do think alcohol, drugs, social media can be the three main indicators. But then again, women can be a big indicator as well. You fucking get a bad bird and fuck me, these bastards, these can fuck you over, you know. But see, when you were doing all that, were you loving your job then? Were you a good cop, or was there any sort of signs of you being a troublemaker or doing any bad shit then? Was there any
No, do you know what? I always got praised for my work, and paperwork wise, there was a little joke on the roster that I wasn't very good at paperwork. And I hold my hands up. I hated the paperwork side of things because I'd rather be out there doing something. You know, I'd literally walk in the morning or walk at the start of my shift, and I'd go and grab a pair of car keys straight away. As soon as briefing's done, I'm out in the car, and I won't come back until the end of my shift. You know, if I had paperwork to do, I'd do it in the car on you get your MDT, your police phone that you can access all the systems on and stuff. I'd be sitting there doing that. You know, I remember sat up one day when we were sat up dealing with a job, and there was a job around the corner, and I thought, okay, I'll put the phone in my pocket and I'll go to this job next, and I'll do both jobs together because I just loved being out and about. I loved that presence of engaging with people and dealing with certain people. And you know, if there was a job, especially when I got my response ticket, you know, because it takes you a little while to get your blue light ticket, and you know, you're trying to get to a job and you're trying to fight through traffic and you haven't got your blue light ticket, so you just sat there, you know, like you're in your car and you know you got to get somewhere fast, and there's nothing you can do about it because there's not enough. There's massive intakes coming in and not enough people to train you up to drive. So as soon as I got that response ticket, Cole, you wouldn't see me in the office. I'd be out all the time in the car. If there was nothing to do, I'd be being proactive. I'd be pulling over cars, trying to find out what people are getting up to, you know, try and stumble across something, you know, watch their NPR cameras going off. And, you know, if the car comes past, it's got no insurance, go and, you know, try and catch up with it and pull it over and see what it is. Because 9 times out of 10, if a car's got no insurance, they're probably up to more. There's probably more that they're up to no good. You know, it's not just going to be the insurance side of things. And I loved it. Like, I loved being out and about, you know, I loved policing, you know, that was just the way that I did. I just being out and about, like, yeah.
So when did the madness start then? When did you get put under investigation?
Well, I mean, I went through a few things, you know. So I went through, there was a thing that people might remember it because I'm still getting recognised for it now. But back in 2019, there was a video that went viral of me rapping in a police car, talking about county lines, drug dealing. And that was my way of trying to engage. You know, I always wanted to educate people rather than just be a bully in a police uniform. Do you know what I mean? So I had this idea. I remember me and a colleague were looking after someone in custody who was, you know, given the whole, if you close the door, I'm going to hurt myself and all this. So we had to sit with him for God knows how long he was in for. But I remember writing this rap about county lines and knife crime and stuff. And I thought it was very current at the time. And there was a lot of it going on. And I wrote this rap, and the intention was to go to corporate comms within the police force and say, this is what I've come up with. Can we do it as like a bit of a engagement thing on social media? And they were very on board with it. You know, they had to get a few people to authorize it and stuff. And that's what they did. And, you know, it's probably where it first went wrong for me, because what they'd said to me was, make sure that goes nowhere, because we need to make sure that we're happy with it before it goes anywhere, because if not, you put yourself in a bit of a position. Now I was stupid. Okay. And what I did was I sent it to a couple of friends and said, look, don't send this anywhere, but just have a look at this. This is what's going to come out soon. And I remember coming back into work after a set of rest days, and the inspector at the time was an old sergeant of mine. And I walked into the office. The first thing he said was, cool, you can rap, can't you? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, I've seen the video of you on YouTube. And I was like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, all of his rota was still working because they're waiting to do the shift changeover, and they've got it on the desk and they're watching it. And it had reached, I think it had gone, someone had obviously leaked it to YouTube. From YouTube, it had gone onto Facebook and Instagram. You had these massive pages like I'm Just Bait that was sharing it. And, you know, I think it was within 24 hours, it had something like 18 million views or something across all the platforms. And that was where it all went wrong for me initially, is that I got pulled into the office by the inspector, and he went, we need to talk about this. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. And he was like, what's happened? And I sort of said to him, this is what's happened. Like, you know, I should have waited, but, you know, I just sent it to a couple of friends and it was stupid. And yeah, lo and behold, I got pulled in, superintendent, and then they had to give me it was called a professional discussion. It wasn't really a disciplinary, but it was like a detailed discussion on paper as to, you know, this is why, yes, it's good. And they said to me, the superintendent at the time said to me, it's fucking good. He said, you know, it's a really good thing. And the fact that it's got like 18 million views or something just shows that it has reached out there. And he said to me, but, you know, because you've gone about it the wrong way, we've got to do something about it. And it was crazy, because I remember sitting in court. I went to Staines Magistrates Court to give evidence, and usually you get put in a witness section with all the victims and witnesses, and they didn't have anywhere available for me to go. So I sat in the main reception area, and this guy from London came up to me and he was like, I know your face. And I was like, I don't recognize you. And he was like, are you the cop and the rapper? And I was like, the rap. And I was like, oh, fucking hell. I was like, this is the last thing I wanted, was to be recognized for that, because it did get to a point where I was a bit cringed out by it, you know, because at the time it was a really good idea. And then I just started cringing me out and all this. And, you know, I was getting nicknamed on social media, people calling me like the notorious PIG and Piggy Smalls. And all these kind of nicknames and stuff like that. And it was quite funny. But yeah, he said to me, he said, look, he said, look, I'll be honest with you, I'm part of a South London gang. And he said, me and the boys watched it on YouTube, and we said, like, it was mad. They said, like, we'd never admit to your face it was good. He said, but trust me, they're all talking about it on the street. And I thought, do you know what? At least it's reached the right sort of people. Do you know what I mean? They probably didn't change their lives, but at least it reached those kind of people. But yeah, that disciplinary would have been the first time I sort of found myself in trouble.
So why for that though? Is it because you had the uniform on? Is it because you were on duty? Like, why you get in trouble for that?
It's because of the way that if they were to put that out, they would have had to put things like location of interest markers on my address. So if someone took a dim view of it and they wanted to target me, which is massively far-fetched, yeah, it was probably never going to happen, but they have to put these measures into place for safety and welfare. So what they said was, because it got released so quickly, they didn't have time to put the LOI markers on my address. They didn't have time to give me a little safety briefing and stuff like that. And that was why they just said, because you went the wrong way of doing it. They said, we were always going to release it, or at least we were always thinking about releasing it. Because you went the wrong way about it, we just couldn't. We had to do something about it, and that's why I got the disciplinary for it.
Should that not have been your indicator then?
Yeah,
not to send any videos, because that's what's done you over.
Yeah.
That's why you're sitting here and the Anything Goes podcast to try and clear the air. Listen, when majority of people are sitting here, it's because they've fucked up, and I'm fucking trying to put the pieces together. But should that have been? Were you naive then to that?
Oh yeah,
and trusting too much? Because you're thinking fuck that. Because listen, whether it's your friends or not, friends fall out.
Yeah.
Girlfriends can run away with your phone, take phones, and before you know it, there's group chats. Like, things can go viral within a minute, especially with so many group chats, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Like, we've got a massive now connection in the world that anything you can put out there. Would that not have put the sort of blinkers on to go, okay, I'm just going to stay in my lane, not annoy anybody, not do any videos, but if I do a video, it's for my own private gain?
Mm-hmm. It should have done. And looking back at it now, I reflect on it a lot. Looking back at it now, that should have been an indicator. And I had colleagues of mine, like one of my best mates on there especially, and he still gives me grief to this day about it. We've only just got back in contact because obviously while I was going through this investigation, I wasn't allowed to be in contact with anyone. So we just got back in contact a couple of months ago, and even now he's like, God, I fucking told you, didn't I? And it's like, yeah, do you know what you did? You did. And I should have listened back then, but I think I was very naive. I was very young in service, and I think maybe I joined a little bit too young. I think I needed that bit more life experience first to really know what was right from wrong, or not from what's right from wrong, because I always knew what was right from wrong, but more so, not sort of being blinded by what I want to do as opposed to what the right thing to do was. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
What was the next one?
That was kind of it, but I think this is where it kind of went a bit south for me, because my intention then was to look for a new department. I'd been on response for I think 3.5 years at this point, or 3 years.
What did your dad say?
I can't remember the conversation. I mean, I imagine he probably would have said you're a bit of a dick. That's probably what the conversation. That's what my dad's like, But it wasn't really that much of a big deal at the time, because it was close to being released anyway. So it wasn't like I hadn't sought permission first. I'd got the permission that they were happy that they believed they were happy that they were going to use this for social media, but I unfortunately had it released before it was due to be released. So I think that's probably why it wasn't taken as seriously as disciplinary, because it wasn't like I didn't check beforehand. Mm-hmm. It was more just it got released earlier than it should have been released, if that makes sense.
So the next one,
it was more. This is where I kind of. I don't know if it's right to say I rebelled a little bit, but it's kind of this is what kind of like made me lose patience in the police a little bit, was that I wanted to join firearms. I wanted to go down a different route of like tutoring or firearms, are the two sort of main departments I wanted to go down. And I remember if you go through a route of changing departments, you have to get authorization from your line manager at the time. Mm-hmm. And my line manager was the same one that had put me forward for this disciplinary for the rap. So I remember going to him and saying that this is what I want to do. And he said to me at the end of this disciplinary, he said to me, this will be the end of it. Now we won't talk about it again. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I think it was 3 or 4 months later, I put an application in for firearms, and he called me into the office and he said, I can't accept it. And I was like, what? How come? And he said, I think it's still too soon from what happened with the rap. And I was like, in my head, I was like, well, you said it wouldn't affect me anymore. You told me that was the end of it, but it never was. And I think that kind of then put me to a point where I then sort of had a bit of I still did my job, don't get me wrong, but I think I kind of had a bit more of I felt like it was against me a little bit, and I kind of just sort of stopped there and thought, I'm starting to lose the enjoyment for this a little bit now. and you know, there was certain things that went on where another example, you know, I'm covered in tattoos. You know, I got a tattoo on the back of my head, back of my neck, up the top of my head, and I checked the tattoo policy to begin with, first of all, and I said, you know, to put a message into the standards department and said, can I just get uniform restrictions, please? Can you let me know exactly what it is I'm allowed to have tattoo-wise? And they said, well, you're allowed to have, the policy's changed, tattoo policy's changed now. You can get a tattoo anywhere on your body as long as it's not offensive. And I said, well, this is what I'm thinking of getting. This is where it's going to go. Is that okay? And they said, as we said before, policy states, get it wherever you want as long as it's not offensive. So I went and got it done. It's quite a big piece. And I remember coming into work and the line manager pulled me in, the same inspector pulled me in, and he said, what's that in the back of your head? And I said, it's tattoo. You know, I wasn't trying to be funny, I just tattoo. And he said, did you get permission for that? And I said, yeah. And he said, show me the permission. So I showed him the permission, the email that I had from him, and he said, well, I need to check with them because I don't think that's good. I don't think, you know, they probably don't know that it's gonna be that big. And I said, well, in my head I'm thinking it's a bit late now. It's a tattoo, you can't get rid of it. And yeah, he sent it off to them, and they came back and they said, yeah, it's fine. And it was just little things like that. And then, you know, I got moved to different rota. I sort of knew that there was an issue there with me and him a little bit. You know, I got moved from the rota that I was in, working at in Guildford, in Surrey. And you know, we got told in briefing that there was a massive shortage on one of the other areas that we covered. And he said, oh, I want someone to come forward and put themselves forward to go there for a little bit. Obviously, no one came forward. It was a really sleepy town. No one really wanted to work there. And I got pulled into the office about 2 weeks later by my sergeant at the time. And he said to me, got some news for you. And I said, I already know what it is. I'm moving on. And he said, yeah. And I knew where it had come from. And it's just little bits like that where I started to not enjoy the police, because not that I felt targeted in a way, but I kind of felt like everything was just falling down on me slowly. And it was like, because I wasn't of rank, there was nothing I could do about it. I just had to accept it. It was part of my job. And I think that's where I've never had a problem with authority, don't get me wrong. You know, I've always respected, you know, people of rank, especially in the police, when I was in that situation. But I think I struggled a little bit with the way that it was coming across. You know, I sort of felt like I couldn't really do anything, and I felt like I was stuck in response. And, you know, I wanted to venture out. I wanted to, you know, build up more of a knowledge of different departments and deal with more exciting things, you know, firearms, shooter unit. And I never got that opportunity. And I think that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, but a lot of people might think you're entitled because of who your dad was. You've got the rapping video that's went viral.
Yep.
You're getting tattoos. They're probably thinking, well, who the fuck's this cheeky bastard think he is? So even though it's a good thing who your dad is in rank, but I would be thinking, we need to keep him in check, because if we let him away with X, Y, and Z, everybody else is going to feel as if they can do it. Yeah. You know, even though you're not. Yeah, you're just genuinely, it's minor stuff, but it's enough for them to think we can't let him away with it. So you would have had more of a magnifying glass on you to try and keep you in check, to make sure you're not using your dad to get away with everything that everybody else gets done for. You know. Yeah.
No, I completely understand that, and I do see that as well. You know, not necessarily from the other PCs that were the other constables at my rank, but maybe officers of rank, probably that you know, you're not wrong. They probably did think that, you know, to a certain degree. Yeah.
Because I've spoke to enough coppers, not everyone gets on.
Yeah.
You know, we know now, listen, whether you're a mason or not, I'm not asked, but there's a lot of secret societies and handshakes in the coppers and everything, and there's their own little clique.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
Yeah.
And if you're not in that clique, you're a pest, and you're getting told what to do, and you're not getting up the ladder as fast as the other guys who are in the same club, you know? So it's like I say, I respect the coppers. I've got many friends in the coppers now, which I never thought I would have. I've got more fucking copper friends than I have criminal friends. Like, it's totally went 360, but it's because I understand their duties and understand their care. Like, there's a lot of dickheads everywhere in life, but to actually want to do that job, it's a different ball game. Because I was at my friend's trial a few months ago as well. The coppers are trying to clean up the streets. They've caught the criminal, but the way they were getting interrogated, as if they'd done something wrong, the copper, as if they'd planted something, and they're sweating and they're all over the place, and you start questioning, are they dodgy? Because they've got the evidence, they've caught them red-handed, but they're flapping in the dock, and they're all over the place. The two officers were contradicting each other's stories. It didn't make sense. And I'm thinking, fuck doing that job, because not only have you got to catch the criminals, but then you have to go to court to try and get the conviction of the criminals that you caught.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly that. It's crazy. It is.
Like, I've never seen anything like it. Like, the big man was, wouldn't say he was flapping, But it's like, why would I be lying?
Yeah.
But the QC's kind of all over it, all over him, and yeah, but you could see the pressure as well. And he's thinking, "Fuck me, I'm telling you the truth." But he had to like repeat himself on many occasions. But while doing that, you're forgetting what you've said. But you says that 2 minutes ago.
Exactly that,
So
yeah.
then, as if you've got
mind
you're
games.
lying. Like it's heavy stuff.
It's mind games.
Like
yeah.
it's not just seeing the dead bodies and catching criminals. It's after you have to go to court as well.
Yeah.
Were you ever nervous like going to court and giving evidence?
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate actually. The only time I ever gave evidence was via video link. I never actually had to go. I went to court physically a couple of times, but I was always, told that I could go because I was no longer needed. So I remember the first one I did was I remember working on, as a doorman, I knew a lot of doormen still, and I remember being sat there on a Friday or Saturday night. If I was finishing my shift, I'd go there and I'd sort of stand there and talk to the doorman for a little bit before going back to the station and handing my keys over to a night shift unit and then going home. But I'm being sat there one night and I was talking to a guy and I heard the sergeant that had just taken over was screaming over the radio for assistance, and I was trying to listen to where he was, and I was only a matter of 150 meters from him where he was. He'd driven around the corner in Guildford and he found two kids smashing up a Nando's windows, and I ran over there. But obviously by this point, because you've got 20 kilograms of body weight on you, I get there and I'm out of breath. And I remember grabbing hold of this guy, and he'd got both the guys up against the window, and he had one of them handcuffed, but he only had one set of handcuffs. So I'll put some cuffs on him. And as I went up there to put the handcuffs on, this kid's like smashed me in the throat. I was like, a little bit, took the wind out of me a little bit. So we ended up having a bit of a scuffle with them both and got them on the floor, and I had to go to court for it. And he tried to claim assault against me. That was his defense, was that I'd assaulted him. But obviously, luckily, you have police CCTV operators who watching the town CCTV at the time and had it zoomed in, so he was never going to get anywhere with it. But it was funny because I remember this story where I'm trying to give my side of the story, and I remember being absolutely grilled by this barrister or solicitor, if you like, because it was in magistrates. I remember getting grilled by this solicitor. I'm sitting there thinking, God, that was tough. I thought that was the defense solicitor, but it wasn't. It was the prosecutor. So I remember sitting there going, cool, at least the prosecutor's out of the way, or the defense is out of the way. I can get to the prosecutor. They'll be nice to me now. And then I realized that actually the person I've been speaking to was the person that was actually on my side, and they're just grilling me because they knew if they could grill me first before the defense get their chance to grill me, then I'm already prepared for it. So it's really clever how they do it. Really clever.
Yeah, you're up against it is a battle. It's not easy. It's never an easy conviction, especially if someone pleads not guilty. Like they'll fight it they'll fight it the whole way. And
100%.
lawyers are switched on now. There's so many loopholes everywhere. Is that one of the difficult things when you've think, okay, I've got the conviction, I've done my job, but they still get off?
Yeah, I think so. But being a response officer, you don't really see many cases through, because the cases that tend to go to Crown Court, especially where you got the trials and stuff like that. Most of those are CID or detectives and other roles. We don't really see that through. We just give our arrest statements. You might have to go and give, you might be cross-examined for your arrest, or for some exhibits you might have seized or something like that, but you never really get to see the whole trial through. So but I don't think I deal very well in that situation. I'm quite a confident speaker, I'm quite a confident person, but sometimes if I'm in a situation where I'm anxious, my memory just goes, and I'll be sat there going, well, I don't remember what happened here. But
that's what that big copper was doing. Honestly. But it made him look guilty. I'm starting to think he set him up. That's what people in the court were thinking.
Yeah.
But you don't know, the judge must see this shit day in and day out. But it was a very uncomfortable thing. I'm thinking, fuck me, like he's got you on toast here.
Yeah.
And he was flapping and he had the hat and he was moving. I'm thinking, it's just crazy, man. That's what I thought. Fuck being a copper.
Yeah.
It's not. There's so many different levels to being a copper that nobody sees. We only see the coppers on the street and they're catching criminals. You don't see what goes behind closed door, the mental health, the struggles, the battles, the having to pick yourself up to go to work, and then having to go to court, and then having to do paperwork. Like, it is a lot, and plus they get paid buttons.
Oh, honestly,
it's pure
so
shite.
poor. Yeah.
So the thing that was all over the news, the media, the four things, right? What are they?
So the first offence, initially there was a lot more, but the offences in which I actually ended up pleading guilty to in the end was, the first one was my partner at the time, her brother, was being threatened by a guy who's in prison. He was saying that when I get out of here, I'm gonna stab you. Essentially, I'm gonna kill you. And I'd received a email from probation services. Everyone had received it. Every officer in Surrey had received it. And they said, oh, this guy is being released from prison. And I looked at the name and I remember thinking, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that name. But anyway, it wasn't until 5 days later when he was released that I actually messaged my partner's brother and said, just to let you know, so-and-so is being released from prison. He should be on a curfew, but just be mindful when you're out and about. Now, the reason that was dealt with as a criminal offence is because I found out that information as a form of luxury because I had access to a police email. So they're saying, had I have seen this guy out on the street, bearing in mind I hadn't prevented anything from happening. You know, he was released 5 days before I told, you know, my partner at the time's brother that he'd been released. They were saying that because I found out through the way that I did, that was the reason why it was deemed as an offence. So that was the first one.
How did they catch you?
Well, when they took my phone off me, so they ended up getting hold of my phone as a result of an associate of mine getting arrested. And
So you've tried to help a family member.
yeah, exactly.
And you've been getting asked. I've no issues with that.
Yeah, not at all. And that's the way that one was.
So what was the second one?
Second one was when this friend of mine was arrested. He was arrested for drug related offences, and I had everyone and their dog messaging me trying to find out. Oh, can you find out what it is? You know, what's going on? You know, we've just seen him outside with a load of police officers. What's going on? And obviously, me being the friendly guy, like everyone trying to be everyone's friend. You know, trying to act for kudos. Essentially, is exactly what the judge said it was. I've messaged a load of colleagues at the time and sort of said to them, you know, this is what I believe is happening. You know, do you know about this guy? I think my friend's been arrested. You know, can you help out? Can you let me know what's going on? And they've said to me that because I had used my position as a police officer, I've essentially abused my power, my position, because I've managed to be in contact with people trying to ask about what's happened, what the offences are that he's been arrested for. They're saying that because again it's a luxury of mine, I shouldn't have done that. That was the second one. So just by talking to police officers to try and find out about someone's arrest that had no concern of mine.
You can look at it in a different way. What information is they trying to get? Is he involved? Is he doing gear? Is he a criminal?
Yeah.
You know, like, is he trying to pass on information where it gives them one up on the coppers? Because back in the day, we used to have scanners. Like my uncles and that used to steal motors. So they used to have like a scanner, but they could radio into the coppers so they could know if the coppers were coming.
Yeah.
You know, and there's only one place you can get those scanners is from coppers.
Very true.
Yeah, but but they can look at it in so many different ways, especially if you've got the rapping, especially if you've got trying to find out, you're trying to give somebody their heads out to somebody that's just out of prison. And then, so it doesn't look good when they start adding it all up. Yeah. What's the next one?
The next one was a COVID offence. So essentially what's happened is, this is me just being a bit of a dick, really being a bit stupid. And what's happened is, I remember I was out in the car as usual, and I got a phone call from a colleague saying, can you come back to the office? I've got a job for you. Perfect job for you. I was like, okay, cool. So I've come back to the office, and this colleague was on light duty at the time due to an injury, so he couldn't go out and about. And he said, we've got a gym that's been someone's called in the gym and said that the gym's still operating during lockdown. Okay. He said, I've tried to ring them. There's no answer. Can you go there and can you, go and make sure that no one's doing anything they shouldn't be doing, make sure the gym's not operating. Now, at the time, I go to the gym, okay? I wasn't allowed to go to the gym because of COVID lockdown, and I was pissed off because, the gym was another massive factor for me that helped me get over what I'd seen at work. That's my release, going to the gym. And I remember at the time there was a lot on social media. There was a gym down in Essex, in Basildon, and a really, really good gym. But what happened is they had police at their address every single day, and they were just filming them, putting it to social media, filming them, posting social media. And what I didn't want to do was go to a gym where I was intending to have a completely normal conversation with the owner about staying closed and be filmed and put all over the internet. So on the way there, I've tried to ring him. Got no answer. Now, then I've contacted a friend of mine who also owned a gym and sent him a voice note, and being Billy Big Bollocks, just trying to be everyone's mate, said, God, fucking ain't never going to guess what. Just been sent to a gym to close them down. They're not going to believe their luck when I turn up and shake their hands for staying open. And that was it was a completely off the cuff remark that I was just trying to be a bit of a dick. I was trying to, be like, look at me, I'm a copper, I'm everyone's friend. And when I actually got to the gym, I remember sitting outside in the car and a woman approached me. Now, the gym looked closed, okay, but obviously I couldn't be sure. Now, when the woman approached me, she said, oh, can I help you? I said, yeah, I'm just looking for the owner of this gym. And she went, oh, I'm one of the owners. And I said, okay, perfect. So I'm still outside talking to her. And I said to her, Sure, what is it? I said that someone's grassed you up. Someone said that you got the gym. You're operating. You're open during restrictions. You understand COVID restrictions means you can't be open. And she said, yes, we understand. I said, look, if I'm honest with you, I'm a gym goer. I'd love to be in there training, but just be careful. And I think the word I said to her was, be very careful because it seems like someone's grassing you up. Okay, and she said that it's not the first time the police have been called out to them. So her reason to me that someone would have called in is she said, oh, we have got staff in there, but there's a staff meeting going on. And where you could see it at the top, there was windows, and you could see people sat around a table, quite a distance apart. And she said, oh, there's a staff meeting going on. I said, okay, fair enough. Now, she said to me, do you want to come in and have a look so you can check for yourself or something along those lines? And in my head, I'm thinking, if she was up to no good and there was people training the gym, she's not going to be asking me to come in to have a look at the gym because she's going to be trying to keep me away from that gym as much as possible. So I batted it off and went, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Just, be more careful in future. Got in the car, drove off. Now, when I got back to the office, and this is the one thing that police officers will understand here, is when you have a job and it's on the system, you have to have it authorized to be closed down, to be to be filed away from the system. So sometimes you over-explain certain things to make sure you've covered everything, every possible avenue they could ask you about welfare, safety, that kind of stuff. So what I'd done is, and looking back at it now, it was really stupid. But what I'd done was I had written on the report that I'd been inside and checked when I hadn't. And because I hadn't been inside and checked, they tried to do me for falsifying a report. And that wasn't a report, that wasn't a criminal report. It wasn't a police report that was going to court or anything like that. But it's still serious enough that I've lied on a report. So the way they look at it is, if you've lied on this report, what other reports have you lied on?
Fair enough.
So I understand that from that point of view, but I didn't want to go guilty to that for a long time. I went not guilty to that for a long time, but that was more so because of the whole government situation. Like I said earlier on, parties, the government having parties and stuff. I thought, well, why the hell am I going to sit here and take a guilty plea for COVID restrictions when the government are out there having parties?
They're
and
all
stuff.
shagging each other.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Fucking wankers, Christmas,
kissing each other.
Yeah, fucking shagging and they're horrible cunts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not anti-authority where I hate everyone. I just hate the way humans are being treated, and I hate the way humans are being misguided.
Yeah.
We don't have to live life this way.
Mm-hmm.
We can live a life in peace and bliss, and all religions, all colours can work together, but we've got so much divide, we've got so much hate between our own communities because of social media, because of what the government portray, because of what the media portray. It doesn't have to be that way, and that's why I get pissed off, because like you say, people are locked it down. Banging pots and pans is like a celebration. Obviously they say it's for the NHS, but it's not. You're embarrassing yourself because you're standing at the door, buying fucking toilet roll, banging pots and pans, celebrating what? Being locked in for a virus that didn't exist, that was a flu. This deadly virus, what just eventually walks up and disappears.
Yeah.
People were getting COVID jabs, boosters, wearing masks, and still getting COVID.
Yeah.
They fooled us, and Pfizer made over 100 billion. It is frustrating because you imagine people losing loved ones because of this. Can you imagine people being suicidal because of this? But can you imagine people losing their business because of this? But yet it's kind of forgotten about because it's just new drama, it's new news, and we forget what they've actually done to us. And that's what frustrates me, because people are good. The people who followed the rules were doing it in the best of their ability and because they cared about other people. Mm-hmm. So it's not that everybody's stupid. They were just so full of fear. They wanted to follow protocol to try and save others, Not only that, I think it hopefully doesn't backfire, because there's so many theories out there and conspiracies. Hopefully we've come through the worst of it, and there has been a rise in turbo cancers and heart attacks, but hopefully everybody will be fine. But people talk, I've interviewed people who say they've fucking get now Bluetooth DNA and it's changed their DNA. Hopefully it's not that deep, because I've had vaccines as a kid. I've got a BCG. I've had flu jabs back in the day when you thought it was normal at school. So, but then again, we're all fucked up. So maybe it must do some damage along the lines, So you've been done for that.
Yeah.
Next one.
This one's the one that I've left till last because it's the most embarrassing one in my opinion. People I've told have laughed at it, but it is an embarrassing one. So this was in relation to, all of them were misconduct public office offences. It's an offence that covers a wide area of different things. MPs can get it done. Police, all these different people in a position of trust, essentially. Now, this one was, we got a call, and I was with a new officer at the time. We got a call, and I was showing him around that it was like an assisted living place. There was nobody on site, but it was for the elderly, and they had these buttons they could push if they wanted emergency help. Now, what had happened is this guy had pushed a button, and the people couldn't get hold of him. When the nurse has been round there to look for him, he's not there. So we've turned up. They've called it as a welfare check, concern for safety, and we've turned up. And I remember we forced entry because we had a worry that he was potentially in there hurt. I think actually looking back at it, I think the nurse that had turned up couldn't get in the property, and that's the reason why we forced entry. But anyway, we managed to get in the property, and he wasn't in there. So the decision was made to start searching the property to look for any clues that we could identify as to where he might have gone. And I'm searching, drawers, bedsides, tables, cupboards, and I found this cupboard in the living room, and in there were some porno DVDs. Okay, and no one has porno DVDs anymore. Yeah. Okay, porno mags, porno DVDs, they're all gone. And it was just like, a split second of just losing my
professionalism.
Professionalism, exactly the right word to use, completely the right word to use. And I started filming them, like not the DVDs, obviously didn't put them on the TV or anything, but just had the covers up, And I remember at the start of the videos, I've got my phone up and I've got my face showing. I'm saying, God, look at this. Like, this is crazy. Like, it's not every day you go into an old man's house and find these pornos. I started reading out the names of them, and like, I couldn't remember what the names were, but you can imagine what some of the porn names were. And, something like Debbie Does Dallas, that old shit and stuff like that. But, and it was just a stupid 5 minutes where I'd just been a bit of an idiot, a bit of a dick. And I'd sent it to this friend of mine who got arrested. And, that video, when I found out he'd been arrested, that's the first thing I thought of was, shit, that video's on his phone. And lo and behold, that's from my understanding, that is what began this whole investigation into me, and that is why I'm sat here today with a 2-year suspended sentence. And yeah, it's madness. But it was more that what I'd done, and I felt disgusted in myself a little bit, because I felt like what I've done there is I've breached a person's privacy in their own home, and at the time it was just a bit of stupidity, but actually looking back at it now, I'm disgusted in myself now for doing it.
Nah, listen, I wouldn't be too hard on yourself. Listen, it's not as if you're putting a pair of his pants on.
No, of course.
You seen a copper just last month, man. He was in the woman's house and he put a pair of pants in his back pocket. That's fucking creepy shit. Do you know what I'm saying? Listen, you have got a sense of professionalism. You've got to kind of respect where you are. We get it, but I'm the same sort of nature. I'd be thinking, fucking dirty bastard. Look, but I get it. You've tried to have a friend. I've tried to have a laugh with your friend. It's a porno. It's not that deep. But like you say, you've got to have professionalism. It's someone else's property, because then people would question, what else does he do when he gets into these properties? But for me, you're probably your own worst enemy. Yeah. You're sending it a guy who's active, who's a fucking criminal. You've sent him a video of your face, which is fucking, you're a copper. Yeah. You should know that's evidence. Banky rights. There's nothing like... Yeah. You're your own worst enemy. Like, your dad must be thinking, like, what the fuck are you doing? Have a laugh. Send it on Snapchat. Send it on something where it disappears instantly. You've recorded that with your fucking cutum and then sent it to somebody who's a risk anyway. So that's both don't look good. Yeah. But it's not that deep. So I wouldn't... For me personally, it's not that deep, but obviously people might go, yeah, that's fucking terrible. Other people will laugh. Yeah. But it's a fucking porno video. You've not fucking went in and videoed the guy in the shower, or put his pants on, or put them over your head. Like, that's fucked up. I wouldn't have you sitting here if you're in there sniffing drawers. Do you know what I'm saying? But I can understand where you're coming from, because your dad's the elite. He's at the top of his tree. Yeah. And you've not just embarrassed yourself, you've embarrassed the family. Yeah. So what happens after that? So how does it all come crashing down?
Well, it's funny actually, because initially when I was arrested, so me getting arrested was, I was driving into work one day. I was due to start, I think, a late shift, and I got pulled over. I remember coming underneath the bridge, and when I came under the bridge, there was an unmarked car with its rear lights on, and I didn't recognise the car. We know all the unmarked cars because we drive them all. Yeah, I didn't recognise this car, so they pulled out behind me as I've gone past them, and they pulled me over, and I thought, maybe I was going a bit quick on the dual carriageway. I don't know what it was, and I remember just being sat there, and they just slapped some handcuffs on me, and they said, "You're Adam," and I said, "Yeah," and they said, "I need you just listen to what I'm about to read to you," and they pulled out this document and started reading out to me. Corruption offence. I got arrested for 2 offences. It was corruption and corruption with no payment. So they call it a certain thing, but I don't know what it was. And then improper use of police systems and policies and procedures. And I remember just on the way into custody, just thinking in my head, what the fuck is going on here? And I remember getting put in the cell, and it was embarrassing. I remember being booked into custody, and I'm in my police uniform because I'm on my way into work, and I'm wearing my, I'm not in the full kit, but I've got, my black top with police written on the side of it, and my trousers with police on it. It's embarrassing. And I remember sitting in this interview, and they genuinely believed that I was involved in Class A supply. they believed that I was heavily involved with this criminal gang, and they done like a whole spider map, had surveillance on me. You know, it then became apparent in the interview that they'd been like watching me on surveillance for weeks and weeks and weeks, try and build a picture of my life. And I mean, it must have been fucking boring for them, because I just all I did was go to work and go to the gym, and that was it. But it very, very quickly, I mean, I was under investigation for 4.5 years. That's a long time. 4.5 years is a long time. But what they actually ended up getting me with, I ended up getting charged with 8 misconduct public office offences. So the CPS charged 8 offences. Initially went to Westminster Magistrates Court, and this was in 2023, first court appearance. And I couldn't plead guilty or not guilty because the prosecution hadn't given us any documentation. So what a wasted journey that was, because we turned up.
No disclosure.
No disclosure, no evidence, nothing at all. So the magistrate was really good, actually. She said, how do you expect Mr. Davis to plead here at a plea hearing when you're not having provided any evidence? So she said, like, I'm going to maintain you some good credit, go to Crown Court, adjourn it to Crown Court for the month after. And I remember coming out of Magistrates Court, and there was a photographer outside the front, and they'd obviously always said to me, like, be really careful, be really, really careful. And I'd walked out, and they said, oh, we can get you a taxi if you want, and we'll take you to the back door. I said, no, it's fine. Like, you won't know who I am. Well, little did I know, there was a reporter that was in there who said, this is what he's wearing, this is what he looks like. And as soon as I've gone to walk out, I've seen him dart from one side of the thing to the other, and he's right in front of me, and he's got his camera out, and he's snapping shots. And this made BBC News at 10. And I remember sitting there watching BBC News at 10, and my face came up, and I just broke. Like, honestly, it killed me, because I was like, the way the media portrayed it was that I was heavily involved, I was corrupt, I was giving criminal gangs information, which wasn't the case at all. You know, I didn't give any information to any criminal gangs, apart from the fact that I was trying to find out. The only information I gave was never sensitive information. It was trying to find out why my mate had been arrested, so I could tell other people potentially why he'd been arrested. And it was like, you've spun that massively to make me look like this god-awful person who is really corrupt and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, that was crazy. But we ended up going not guilty to these 8 offences in Crown Court.
What was the headlines in the paper?
I can't remember. It was really funny, actually, because it's going to sound really, really strange, but at the time that this first all started, I didn't trust the process. I didn't trust the officers that were investigating me at the time, because one of them was someone who I was very close with in terms of a closely worked partnership with. And I didn't like the fact that he was heavily involved, because we'd already had issues in the past. But once he left that department and it was taken over, I tell you what, the officers that investigated me were fantastic, because she called me up. So one of these sergeants took it over. She was fantastic. She's brilliant. She called me up and she said, look, you got court next week. And I said, yeah. And she said, I need to make you aware of something. We're going to be putting out something in the media about what's going on, because we have to let the media know beforehand in case they want anyone to attend. And she went, but I'm calling up today, firstly, to make you aware that it's going to go out there so it's not a surprise. And I want to read out exactly what we're going to put out. And I thought, you know what? Fair play to her, because she didn't have to do that. You know, she could have just been like, fuck this guy, he's guilty, whatever. Let's just chuck it in the papers and just let him sit there and in sorrow or whatever. But yeah, she called me up. So it was mad. But the media, like I said, the way the media said it was that I was giving information to criminal gangs, that they portrayed me to be some like awful person that was, taking money for stuff, and it was bad, like involved in Class A supply and all this kind of stuff. And that really affected me, because I was like, well, this is friends and family that don't really know the ins and outs of what I'm going through here. I've not been found guilty yet. I've gone not guilty, and yet you're still putting it all over the papers. And I didn't really understand or feel like that was fair. But ended up coming to a deal a year and a half later. It got put to a trial. It was going to be a 13-day trial, and we ended up, a little bit just before the trial, we ended up coming together. My barrister and my solicitor were fantastic as well. And they came together and they said, right, we can take this to trial. We'll probably win most of them, but there'll be some that we might not win. They said, and with the COVID one, because I was adamant I didn't want the COVID one, right? They said, with the COVID one, you could get a jury of young people who are in the same boat as you, in the same position as you. They didn't like COVID either. Or you have a jury full of older people who have lost friends and family to COVID, who are going to look at you like a piece of shit, and then you're more likely to be found guilty. So in the end, we ended up coming at the plea deal. No one really wanted to go to trial. I didn't want to go to trial. It was, the thought of, like you said earlier on with the guy in the box, the thought of being stood in the box and being cross-referenced and stuff, I would have hated that. Every single minute of that, no one likes that. So yeah, we ended up coming out to a plea deal. We actually offered the prosecutors 5 offences out of the 8, and they took 4, because we offered them 4 initially. They wanted one of the bigger ones. And we said, well, we're not giving you a bigger one initially. And then he said, well, what about if I take one of the smaller ones away and you take one of the bigger ones? And we ended up taking, we gave them 5 and they took 4 in the end. So they actually let us have one off.
What would have been the worst case scenario if you get found guilty for everything? You talking prison time or just a fine?
Yeah. So I was very lucky to escape. So what the judge had said to me was,
really?
Yeah,
For that?
honestly, yeah. And
How much prison time?
The judge has said to me that had I gone guilty on the first day of trial, I would have got 2 years and 3 months straight inside, because he said, public money, you've cost us a jury to get a jury in. Yeah, you've gone guilty at first day of trial, but we still would have had to spend money, public's money, on getting a jury in, all this kind of stuff. But because we'd brought a date forward to go guilty, he said, because we hadn't had to spend public money on a jury, I'm going to give you a suspended sentence. And I can see that you're remorseful. I can see that you didn't do anything malicious. It was all, you did things out of kudos for your friends. And I was very fortunate, actually. The judge that I had is one of the most respected judges in this court. He essentially is Southwark Crown Court, and he was very much the top dog in that court. And I wrote him a letter beforehand, and I just broke my heart out to him basically about my son, and how I've just managed to get a mortgage, and I'm on the right side, having left the police. I'm working again full time. My life's good. My life's really good. I'm working with local charities for the gymnastics club. Trying to get people kids off the street and into the gymnastics club with the local police force. And I think he kind of could see that actually, yes, I'd been a bit of a dick, and there'd been certain things that I'd done. But like you said, not as serious as what people might have thought, having read the media or the news. But yeah, I was very lucky. He ended up giving me, I think I got 2 years suspended sentence and over £1,000 court costs and 108 hours community service. But by this point, he's telling me all this stuff, and I'm going, just throw it all at me. I'll take everything. I'll take anything you want now, just not prison time. Mm-hmm. And I bawled my eyes out in that courtroom. It was horrible. I remember hugging my son for what I thought would be the last time for a little while. Me and his mum had discussed that, if I go to prison, he's not coming to visit me because we don't want him to see that environment, which I totally understand. But God, fucking broke me in half, honestly. Just hugging him for the last time the night before, and then just get on the train. I was crying my eyes out on the train. I'm man enough to admit that, I cried like a baby. My dad was in bits. My partner at the time, my ex-partner at the time, she was in bits as well because she came. And it was awful. My best mate was there. He came. It was horrible. It really was.
Is that how deep it was?
Yeah, it really was. Because
see, I'm laughing because I'm thinking it's fuck all. I don't know the codes of the coppers. I don't know the laws with who you can talk to, who you can't. But I imagine there's got to be some duty of care.
Yeah.
Who you speak to, who you surround yourself with. It's like a prisoner comes out, he's out on license, and maybe speaks to someone who's active. Mm-hmm. He can get a recall. Just for association. So I'd imagine you would have knew all that though.
Yeah.
So that's where you like I say, you've got to look at it from the other side. Yeah. You've done these videos, you continue to do these videos, you continue to be surrounded by these criminals, you continue to send videos to these criminals. Like it doesn't look good because that's what you've been caught with. So you'd be questioning what's he done off camera, what's he not done, do you know what I'm saying? What's he saying, what information is he giving criminals heads up? Is he getting backhanders? Like you know the way the coppers work, you've got to look at it from every angle. From me, I'm thinking that's shit's funny, video and a porno, but obviously you're going to get people saying it's not funny.
Well, it's public perception, isn't it? So this is the way that I was very fortunate in my case. There was no victim as such. You could say the elderly gentleman was a victim, but actually the offence in which I was charged with is it's an offence against a state, essentially. So it's to do with offence against, it used to be Regina when it was the Queen in charge, but obviously now it's the King. I don't know what it is now, but there's no victim. So the judge doesn't have to appease a victim. There's no victim in this case, so therefore they haven't got to appease the victim. So, but public perceptions, and what he was saying is that most police officers will get sent to prison because it shows the public that they are taking zero tolerance, and also it shows other police officers in future that if they're thinking about getting involved in crime, or they're thinking of being a bit stupid on duty and getting themselves in trouble, that actually, you can go to prison for this shit. And that's why I was very fortunate to avoid prison. I was being told by everyone. My solicitor made me pack a bag, obviously, as they have to make you. My solicitor and barrister was saying, like, we're going to get a custodial here, and prepare yourself, we're going to get a custodial. And fucking hell, it was awful.
What about the old guy with the pornos? That obviously, what happens then if you've got a video, his pornos, he's sitting there just wanking himself to sleep every night. Who goes to him? Who tells him? Does somebody has to go to him and say, listen, there's a video with somebody watching your pornos?
I don't know, because I don't know if they could identify who it was. I think they could just see that clearly I was on duty at the time of doing it. They could probably have looked back at the timestamp of when it was. You know, they've got all these electrical equipment now that they can, you know, do this kind of stuff, and they probably could have worked it out. But I don't know if they would have even bothered to go and speak to him. They probably would have just, you know, because regardless of whether he wanted to support anything anyway, you know, it's the police, and I'm a police officer at the time. They're going to do an investigation. They're going to do it victimless. They're going to do it as, you know, an offence against the state rather than an offence against the person directly, because that's what it is, you know, misconduct of the public office. So
Because he could have probably sued as well.
potentially, but again, that's the video. It's public perception, isn't it? If that video gets out, and I'm of the impression, and I'm still very, very strong of this impression, that all of that probably could have been dealt with as gross misconduct. It didn't need to go to a criminal investigation. But I think because they went so deep down the rabbit hole initially, thinking that I was this, you know, involved with this massive, you know, organized crime group, you know, and thought I was heavily involved in drug supply and stuff. You know, the rumors that were flying out. I remember being in the gym and hearing a rumor that from someone that all the police officers in a different area of the place I worked in were talking about how I'd been found with 3 kilos of cocaine under my floorboards in my room. Well, you know, I can't go on Facebook and go, just to let everyone know, you know, it wasn't the case, but it's crazy. But again, this is another reason why I want to get my story out there, because there'll be people out there that won't even know what's gone on.
Do you feel as if someone's threw you under the bus? What you've done is wrong,
Yeah.
okay? But for me, it's not. You're not fucking taking shipments and loading your car and money laundering and giving people valuable information that they're maybe getting surveillanced. Like, it is petty stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's very petty, but I can understand why you've been prosecuted as well.
Yeah.
But it's potentially there been a bit of hate, a bit of jealousy, maybe that somebody's put the feelers out or maybe dropped those secrets. He's got information, or he's doing this, where the investigation's got bigger than what it should have.
Some of the statements that I got to read, so obviously when all the evidence came through to me, I got to read the statements. And
How many against you?
None of them were really against me. There was one that I didn't like the sound of, because the way she perceived me, and this was another thing my barrister looked at and was like, yeah, we'll use this. There was one person who I didn't not get on with her in the police, but we never really saw eye to eye. We were never rude to each other. You know, we worked to get really well together, but we for some reason there was just a bit of a clash there. And all of these, I think there was about 19 to 20, maybe low 20 statements, you know, of character references from officers that worked with me, saying we've never seen any idea, any examples of corruption from Adam. This is the kind of officer he was. He worked hard. He was a bit of a dick on duty in terms of, you know, he didn't always take his job seriously in a sense of he was a bit of like the rota clown, if you like, but he worked hard. So and that kind of played into exactly what my defense was, but actually I was just acting for kudos. I wasn't really taking my job as seriously as I should have done. I did a good job, but I fell below the standards expected of me on occasion. Yeah. But anyway, this statement was like, Adam's lazy. He never does a good job when he's working, or something along those lines. You know, we've had to have conversations with him multiple times before, but this is one statement that stood out from this person that I didn't really get on with, as opposed to the other 19 statements from people saying that I was actually a good police officer. And you know, but I actually, I was going to read it out actually, because I remember a text message I got from a sergeant of mine at the time when I was going through the whole court process. And that was tough in itself. But then he sent me a thing saying something along the lines of, you know, I don't know what it is that's happened, and quite frankly, I don't care. You're a fantastic officer. I'll tell you what, can I read it out?
Of course you can.
So I've got it on
Read
it. I
whatever you
want to
want
get it
out.
word for word, because that was when I got sent that. I basically went on social media and talked about mental health and was like, look, I'll let everyone know I've been struggling recently, but I'm speaking out about it because it's the right thing to do. And he sent me a message and he said, hi Adam, just seen your Facebook post. I hope that things could get better for you, mate. You're a top copper. It was a shame it had to come to a close. I never knew what happened, and quite frankly, I don't care either. Regardless, you're a proper copper and always did a good job for us. Stay safe, brother. And that was a sergeant/inspector at the time. And I replied back a little message just saying, like, Rick, you don't know how much that means to me. Thank you so much that you're not listening to what the media is saying. You're going based on my own merit of what you saw from me. And he replied back, keep going. You know, there's so much out there. You're young enough to find a whole new career. It might not come straight away, but you'll get there. He said, the job's pretty fucked at the moment, if that makes you feel any better. And then he said, just keep that determination you've always had. You got this. And I thought, you know what? Like, that was nice. And he was someone who was always very much to the book. He was a proper, you know, to the book. But actually, to get a message like that from someone like him, like, you don't know how much that means to you when you're going through this shit.
It does help, because listen, brother, I go through it myself with the media and courts. And I know my story. I know my side. But we're living in a day, first of all, people who don't like you want to believe the lies. Anyway, you'll get people on the fence who can be easily manipulated by the media who are going to believe it. So you've got a big percentage of people who are against you straight away. If you look at the comments, if you look at the other things, so it is damaging because you know, wait a minute, I'm a good guy. I've not done this what the media are trying to portray. And that's the frustrating thing, because if you're guilty, anything I fucking do in life, I own up to it.
Yeah.
I'm a fucking man. I'm not struggling. I'm doing well. Everything's good. I don't need to shy away. Do you know what? I fucked up. I've done this. I apologise. But it's when you're having to justify things you haven't done. That's a different ball game. When you're trying to have people assassinate your character because of the life that I've created as well over the years. I do well. I fucking treat people well. You'll never get anybody really speaking shit against me. You'll get the odd ball bag, the odd wanker.
Everyone does.
Everybody does. But when the media come, and they try and tarnish and they try and damage, it must be difficult. Was it difficult looking at the comments? Was it difficult looking at the media? Were you doing that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Because that makes your mind worse.
It's a downward spiral, isn't it? Unfortunately, I remember at the very beginning, I was really wound up by the way the media were portraying it, because it wasn't the way that it was. They're very clever because they don't want to get done for defamation of character, so they'll be very careful how they word it. So the way they worded it wasn't necessarily wrong, but they'd worded it in a way that made it sound 10 times worse than what it was. And I remember when I got charged, I remember the police put something out. They've got to show that they actually done something about it. They put a post out about me and what I'd been given, what the judge had given me, what was said at sentencing and stuff like that. And I remember the comments from people in the local area who had seen that, and some of the comments were like, "Oh, not another one," and one of the other people were like, look at that, the judge is looking after him by not locking him up, and you lock him up, throw away the key." And I'm sitting there thinking, you lot know fuck all about this. You know what the media want you to know. Let me get my story out there. Let me tell you exactly what happened. Let me tell you, from my point of view. I'm not trying to justify any of it here. Don't get me wrong, but let me explain it exactly how it happened, rather than how you're reading it as it happened. Do you know what I mean? So. It's just, but I think once you start doing that, it's a downward spiral. You just need to take yourself off social media and I deactivated my account for about 6 months. And I got quite a big, I got an okay social media following, and I had to deactivate it for six to 8 months because I just couldn't hack it anymore.
Did you have much backing? Did you have people fighting your corner to say this is bollocks? Or could you, because you've been caught red-handed?
Yeah.
Was there any fight that you could have put up anyway?
Well, they were very the way they've got to do this investigation is they tell you can't speak to anyone, any employee of the force. And initially I'm sitting there saying, well, can I speak to my dad? And they said, we'll have to find out and let you know. And could you imagine that? Yeah, you can't speak to your dad, actually. No, you can't, because he works for the force. Later on they were like, yeah, of course you can speak to your dad, that's fine. But because I couldn't speak to anyone for, well, I was on bail for I think 10 months in the end. And after bail, you're released under investigation, but no one wants to talk to you because the investigation hasn't stopped. So I didn't speak to my best mate for 4.5 years. We only recently got back in contact about 2 months ago. We went and played golf together. We said about golf earlier, weren't we? We went to play golf together, and it was amazing. Honestly, it was so good. But yeah, just didn't speak to him for 4.5 months. Now you can imagine, I've gone from being in the police where everyone is, your friends are your family in the police. I haven't really got any friends outside the police. That's when I leave. So when I leave, I've got no friends. The friends that I used to have before I joined the police, apart from obviously the ones that obviously I'm in this mess because of, well, not because of, that's wrong, but the ones that I was obviously associating with in the gym, I don't speak to them anymore because of the way that this all worked out, and obviously now I'm aware of certain stuff that they get involved in. I don't want to be involved in that. I don't want to be, especially now I'm not in the police, I don't want to be dragged into that. I'm on a straight path. I want to carry on being. I don't want to go through that court process ever again. It was awful. That was enough to scare me off forever. I'm never stepping foot in that dock again. Never.
It makes you question the guys who are in court every other fucking one. Like
awful.
But even though police should get help, there should be more help for criminals.
Yeah.
Because it's not as if these criminals are bad. They're a bit deranged. They've been raised in the broken homes. There's no love. There's no structure. There's no purpose. There's no discipline.
Yeah.
So even though they keep repeating the same cycles, we need things to break those cycles to change their mindset. Because many people go to prison, and some of them are the best teachers when they come out.
Yeah.
Because they've learned from the mistakes. Not everybody learns. There's a high percentage who reoffend. You're obviously going to be the other side of the percentage who doesn't reoffend, hopefully. But then again, you're naive, brother.
That is not.
Do you think you're gullible? Would you say you're gullible? Because you don't come across as like you're gullible. But the way I'm seeing it is, could you have been getting used as well with people close to you? and you might not have seen it that way.
I mean, it probably could have got to that point. I do sit there and wonder, you know, maybe had this have not come out, you know, would I now be in a position where I was being used? But I like to think that I'm pretty on the ball with that kind of stuff. That, you know, I had people that there was a couple of people messaging me asking me to do certain things. Like there was one of them was like, "Oh, can you run a car through?" And I've gone, "Yeah, no worries. I'm back in on Thursday. I'll do it then." And this is obviously one of the reasons why that they looked into me, but I never did that. That was me just trying to be everyone's friend by being like, let me appear to be helpful, even though I was never intending to do that. You know, and obviously that didn't happen because otherwise I would have been charged with that as well. But that's the kind of person I am. I think I was a bit of a people pleaser, and I think that's kind of why I ended up getting into the position I did, or the situation that I did, because I do try and be everyone's friend. I try and mix work life and pleasure, and as a police officer, it's very, very clear now you cannot do that. It's going to bite you in the arse like it did me.
That's your downfall, brother.
Yeah.
Try to be liked.
Yeah.
The power of saying no is just as strong as any word on the planet.
I thought that I could take on, you know, the negativity towards police officers is on a massive high right now. And I thought, me being me, yeah, I can single-handedly take this on. I can make everyone like the police again, you know, and it didn't happen. And here I am on the other side again, you know.
That is mad though, bro. Like I say, what happened to the guy who you were sending the videos to? Whatever happened to him?
He was dealt with for drug offences, and he got. I mean, his was going on for a long, long time as well. And I'm pretty sure I saw in the media, like I said, we don't talk anymore, but I saw in the media that he got. I think he got community service.
Yeah, so it was not as if it's big bits. It's not as if it's big shit
but
from Jamaica.
No, of course it's not. Of course it's not. But you know, I'd imagine the way that they treated me, I'd imagine they probably thought it was on a much larger scale than probably what it was.
Did they ever try and put you in the same charge sheet as him?
Well, not the same charge sheet, but when I was put into my first interview, when I was taken into custody, they had this spider diagram where they had me in the middle, or I can't remember if it was me in the middle or it was like an up in the middle, and they just had all these people and how they knew each other. So they had me in this spider diagram with all these different people. Now, because I was worked at the door and most of these guys were ex-doormen or ex-people that used to come out, of course I was linked to all of them in a way. You know, I trained in the gym with a guy who was a naughty kid. You know, he was a naughty kid back in the day. You know, did a lot of time in prison, but hadn't been in prison for like 20 years. And I was training with him in the gym, and they were like, they tried to put that to me. Well, he's an associate of yours. You know, he's a criminal associate. Hold a minute, he hasn't been in prison for 20 years. How is that a criminal associate? Okay, yeah, he might have a criminal record. I understand that, but he's not a criminal at the moment. He's not a criminal now. You know, he's got a job. He's got a family. There's all stuff he done when he was a kid. And he's 40 years old now. He came out of prison when he was 20. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but yeah, it's just, this is the thing as well, is that, you know, I'd made these associates aware. I'd made the police aware of these associates or some of these associates' names when I first joined, and I got pulled into a meeting when I was, I think really, really like young in service. I think I was only in for like 3 months. And I got pulled in for a meeting, and I mentioned this person's name, and what they should have done there and then was say, and I think this is the reason why we didn't go guilty to this, because I think this would have got thrown out of court. But they said, well, you haven't told us about your criminal associates. And we said, well, actually we have, because this person who this person's name, I was pulled in for a meeting about when I first joined 3 months in, because of some, I can't remember what it was for now, but there was something anyway. So they didn't tell me to put him through as an associate to vetting, so I didn't bother. They just said, be very careful, keep him at arm's length kind of thing. Now, after he got arrested in that October, because I was aware there was obviously stuff on his phone, that video of me, I put a new vetting form in and said, I just want to make you aware of a new associate. And because I think you've got 12 or 14 days from the person being arrested to notify the police of that associate, I did it within, I think, 9 days. So I was covered, but they still tried to put that to me, but I was covered because I'd already made them aware. Mm-hmm. But it's just, you know, yeah, associates you'll be so careful of.
And it's understandable, like I said, you're your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just one or two things, it's silly little things. Yeah. But the way the coppers have got a duty of care for people, you know, and you have made mistakes and you are guilty for some of those things. Yeah. What was it like when it came to a head? What was it like when it was over?
It didn't feel real initially. You know, I walked out that courtroom, I was crying my eyes out. My dad was crying his eyes out. My best mate wasn't crying his eyes out. My best mate, he's a bit of a troubled childhood. Lovely guy, single dad. He's a fantastic dad. Honestly, he's got a 5-year-old now, and he's just like, everything he does is for his kid. He's such a good guy. Like, probably changed his life around. But he's obviously been in and around the court system, you know, a lot when he was younger. And I remember all of us are sobbing our eyes out. My brother's there crying, I'm crying, my dad's crying. And he's just running up and down the hallways going, yes, I told you you'd be fine. And it's just like, no, not now. Let's just get out of here first. Don't do this now. Let's get out of the building. Because, you know, it still hadn't sunk in that actually I'm okay here. Or not okay, but I've got a really good outcome here. You know, I've got a suspended sentence. I've got hours community service. I've got a fine that I'll just go and pay right now downstairs. But, you know, it didn't feel real even until maybe 2 months later, because you've been dealing with it for 4.5 years. It's been hanging over you. You've not known what your outcome's going to be for 4.5 years. You know, I didn't know my relationship with my son struggled because I didn't want to get too close in a bond, and then just knowing that if I end up going to prison, I'd be leaving him. And that's one of the hardest things to deal with, you know, and that broke me a lot, you know, and even now, like, you know, I'm going through the community service side of things now, and it's like just trying to get it started and trying to, because, you know, I'm around people now in this community service environment. I'm around people who have been in and out of the system their whole life, and don't want to get in the system. Do you know what I mean? But yet here I am having to do community service with these people who none of them know that I'm an ex-copper. Because you imagine finding out that I'm an ex-copper, you know, that my community service would not be worth going to. But, you know, it's just, I want to get it over and done with. So once it's done, like my probation's done now. You know, I went through a probation period, but they've done a new thing now where if you're low risk of reoffending, then you only have to go for 16 weeks. And then after 16 weeks, it's all managed out of house. So I haven't got any probation meetings anymore. So that's all done. You know, I've proven that I can do that. Community service, I've knocked off about 35, 40 hours already. I've still got another 140 to go. But
were you ever suicidal?
If I'm being totally honest, no, but only because I knew I couldn't be, or not that I couldn't be, but I knew that I had people relying on me, and I like to think I'm quite a strong-willed character. Don't get me wrong, I've been at the point, I've been at a low point, you know, the lowest point of my life, where I did sit there and think, I could understand why people commit suicide. That I got to that point, the point where I could understand, okay, this is what people feel like when they want to do it. But I knew, like, you know, my son, you know, I had a partner at the time who we had a mortgage together. I was like, I can't leave her in the shit, you know, my son. And the way I also looked at it as well, what really kept me going was my solicitor kept saying to me, you're still young, you still get your whole life ahead of you. Yes, this is a shit part of your life, but you're young enough to get a new career. And I thought, actually, do you know what? She's right. Yes, I've been struggling with this now for, you know, it started when I was 24 and it didn't finish until I was 30. You know, it's almost 6 years this thing was going on for, in terms of like age. But yeah, just my mental health was in the pan. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said I was never suicidal, but I could understand why people commit suicide going through these kind of things.
It's mad where life takes us, isn't it? So what's your daily routine like now?
I mean, I'm a lorry driver now, so, you know, I have a great job. You know, the people, and this is the one thing, when I went to this interview to get this job, I was honest with them straight away, and they said, "Oh, how come we left the police then?" And I said, "Oh, here we go." Right. I thought I might as well tell them because I'm not going to get the job now. But I said to them, "Look, this is what happened." Went from beginning to end, like I've done with you today, and they said, "Okay, we'll be in contact." And I thought, "Oh, fucked it here. No worries. I'm going to struggle to get a job here." Left, went to another job the next day. As I took the job the next day in this other place, the place I'm at now called me and said, "We'd like to offer you the job." And I'm sitting there going, did they listen to what I said to them yesterday, or, you know, what's going on? But when I went in there, they said, "Look, we've got people that work for us, you know, who've got records, criminal records," and they said, "As long as you don't do anything while you're here, I'm more than happy to."
Yeah, don't be going to fucking some glory hole, bro, and video yourself, for fuck's sake, you know what I mean? Yeah. Fucking hell. If I've got you back on here in 2 years because you videoed yourself getting a suki in some dirty toilet on your way to France, mate, I think, listen, you've only got yourself to blame, but I can tell you're a good guy, you've been raised well. Fucking naive though, like you can't trust anybody, no matter who it is, no matter how close you are. Like, it's such a fucked up world, and living in a world of views. So if they feel as if they can get clout from it, they're going to throw you under the bus from it. And that's just the way it is now. No matter if it's family, best friends, partners, people are always saving up clout because of what could happen in the future to protect themselves. We're living in a very doggy world where people have no morals anymore. There's no respect. But then again, there's some of the crimes you did deserve to be guilty. They are minor. It's not as if But to get in 2 and 3 years, like that would have been heavy. You know, that's a big burden, especially with your dad and other family members. And I was thinking everybody was protected, they helped their own. I always thought that about the royal family. And now they're all fucking through under the bus, and potentially Prince Andrew could be getting the jail. Nobody's protected.
I spoke to a friend of mine who's a prison officer because I wanted advice. You know, I got to the point where I was like, right, what do I do? And he said to me, if you get 9 months, or if you end up, let's say you get like 18 months, you're going to serve 9 months. If you get anything that's going to serve less than 9 months, he said, just go to the VP, go to the VP wing, and yes, you're going to be with a load of nonces and rapists and stuff like that, but you need to understand that it's only 9 months. Okay, you just got to keep your head down because you're an ex-police officer. And he said the thing with you're lucky because you don't look like a police officer. You know, you're covered in tattoos, you're a big guy. You know, you're not going to walk into a prison, they're going to go, he's ex-police. You know, not at all. He said, but you might get called a nonce because you're going to be in the VP wing. He said, but that's 9 months, you can deal with that. He said, if you get any longer than that, just try your best to get into a normal wing and just keep your head down and try not to get in trouble. And that's what the plan was going to be. But luckily I didn't have to find out. But
see, I don't even think it's that bad for coppers in the jails here. But I think America's different. I think here's nobody's asked. People majority of prisoners just want to get their time done and get out. You know, and you're very on it anyway. You know what I'm saying? You're a unit. You can speak, you can talk the talk. Yes, you'd have got a few dickheads, but the last thing you would have wanted was to cause any more trouble and getting more add-ons. So it was in your mindset that if you were getting 3 years, you were going straight to the nonces wing?
Well,
if you plan that?
I had a plan in my head, yeah, which is even worse. Could you imagine, like just having a young child as well, like, and some of the stuff that I'd heard, you know, that guy that we spoke about earlier, who you know, his own child, and that was the difficult thing for me, was actually where am I going to go from here? You know, I'm going to be surrounded by these people, and I'm going to have to, you know, try and find myself not in with these people. Let's just make it very clear, not in with these people, but be around these people and just grin and bear it for 9 months to a year. And
that's difficult.
And it's crazy. But I'm using it now. Like, you know, now I'm actually working, ironically, which is really ironic. I'm actually working with the police again. Voluntary, of course, not getting paid. But I'm doing these speeches now. And we just actually filmed something got released yesterday in the force, where I sat down and I spoke to the detective chief inspector of the anti-corruption unit, and we just did some reflection. And he wants it because I stepped forward to them, and this is one of the things I said in the letter to the judge. I said, I want to, because as you've said yourself, the stuff that I've done doesn't seem very serious to an outside person. But this is the thing: other officers will fall victim to that because they won't believe that what they're doing is wrong. And if I can prevent them from doing that, that's what I'm trying to do now. So I'm working with my old force to do a prevent program, to go and give speeches to the new officers, to try and explain to them what I went through and how easy it is to fall into that trap, because that's what I want to do now. I want to use it as a, you know, when I left the police, it was obviously on a negative, but I want to try and turn that around and try and turn it into a bit more of a positive, or at least a better way of going out. Do you know what I mean?
For officers not to make the same mistake you did. Yeah. But we're living in a society, every second person's dodgy.
Yeah.
There's going to be a family member that's active, or a friend that's active, or someone in your gym who's active. Yeah. It's hard to stay away from criminals. We've got dating websites, we've got social media, everybody's accessible. You know, when you're on dating websites, you don't know who the family of the girl is, you don't know who the man is, his background, we don't know, so it's difficult. And people are easily groomed, humans are easily manipulated. Everyone, we can easily be, if someone's on their game, anybody can be confused, anybody can be blinded by the real fucking, what their real agenda is, you know. And you were somebody who was fit and healthy, and you've kind of tried to be light. Yeah. Yes, man. And it's come back and bit you in the ass. But fair play for trying to make amends and show people how, I wouldn't say you were corrupted. You knew deep inside it was wrong, but you still went with it because you thought it's not that bad. And no doubt a majority of coppers would give people heads up anyway, family members, listen, they're on you, or be careful of him. Because in Glasgow, Scotland, we get Osmond warnings. Right, okay. If someone's life's in danger. I think they reversed the Osmond warnings now. I had 2 read out in my 20s, a threat to life. But I think they reverse it now. So instead of the person who they think's going to get harmed, they go to the person who they believe that's going to be doing it and saying, if anything's happening, you're getting took in first. I think it's all changed now. Okay. Which I think's fucking fair, because if you get an Osmond, they don't tell you the name, you're thinking, what the fuck is going on?
Walking out.
Okay, but they've reversed that. So they go to the person who the information they think's going to do something. Right. Okay. I think anyway, I've this is many years ago, but life's good then, you've sorted everything, you've came face to face with it. How are you feeling today?
Really good. Yeah, I really appreciate having me on because, you know, like I said earlier on, like I've not had a chance to really give my side of the story. You know, there's still people out there that will believe what the media write. There's still people out there that haven't really had a chance for me to listen. And yeah, life's great now. Like life's great. I'm back doing gymnastics again. I'm competing. I did British Championships a couple of months ago, and you know, again, like I'm 31 next week, and I'm still competing in gymnastics. And
good one, yeah. But just smash it. But even anything you want, anything you do productive, the papers will spin it as the corrupt copper. But use it to your advantage. Fucking write a book. Build your social media. You own it. You know, I've interviewed murderers, drug lords, bank robbers, fucking serial killers. They're thriving. They're going and speaking in prisons, schools, making money off books, TV deals. It's not that deep. Like I say, I'm just an outsider. I don't know the codes of conduct and how you should behave in the coppers. I understand you shouldn't be speaking to criminals. I understand you shouldn't be fucking videoing out in the job or stealing someone's fucking underpants. You never done that, but I seen the video of that creepy bastard. And you must see that and think, you know what? I'm not him. It must make you feel a bit, but at least I'm not sniffing drawers, you know. But end of the day, bro, you've done what you've done, and the best thing about what you can do is put your hands up and go, do you know what? It's over now. I've done it. I've admitted it. There's nothing you can do. What can anybody do?
I'm not making excuses for what happened. You know what I mean, I want to write a book. That's going to be what's next, I think. But
you're lucky you weren't fucking friends with me, bro, when you were in the coppers, because I would have been fucking terrorising you with funny videos, mate, and getting you to do more. I thought it would have just been a buzz. Do you know what I'm saying? Imagine having a copper pal and he's sending videos with somebody's pornos, you know? Like, that is fucking so minor, man. But I do understand. I do understand the consequences, you know? Plans for the future, bro. What's your plans?
The book. I want to write a book. You know, again, like the thing for me now is now I can go down the route of actually being a dad now. You know, I've never not been a dad, but I can actually start to look to the future now. You know, before the future was uncertain for me. I didn't know how long I was going to get in prison, if I was going to go to prison. So like I said to you earlier, I didn't really want to. Not I didn't want to, but I felt bad, you know, carrying on that bond with my son a little bit. So, you know, the relationship kind of fizzled out slightly. You know, they weren't as close because I wasn't doing as much with him. But, you know, ever since this whole court thing's been over and done with now, like I'm just trying to be the best version of the dad that I can be. You know, I'm taking him out, doing stuff with him, spending money on him. You know, he comes over to stay, and you know, it's just great. Like it's so nice that I can actually do that now and not have to worry about the consequences of what could or what might happen in future. But yeah, carry on the gymnastics, playing rugby now. You know, keep myself busy with stuff. You know, just keep myself busy, because I feel like when I'm busy, I'm happy, and if I'm not busy, that's when I start to get the itch of I need to do something here, you know, I need to do something, I need to go on holiday or something like that, you know. But yeah, that's the plan. Keep talking to new officers and try and get involved. You know, like I said, at the moment it's all very much in-house with my old force. I've obviously managed to maintain quite a good relationship with some people in there, so being able to go back and speak to them and deliver these speeches, but eventually to do it with, you know, other forces as well, and venture out to different forces who might want me to come and do it. You know, like I said, I'm lorry driving all around the UK at the moment. You know, if I'm up in, I don't know, if I'm up in near Newcastle and they want me to come in and do a speech, then at least I'm up that way, I can do it. And it'd just be nice to be able to give something back in a way, take what happened to me that was negative in my life and try and spin on a positive and try and help other people not make the same mistakes and fall down that trap of, you know, ending that career that you worked so hard to achieve.
Yeah, it's just education, isn't it? It's just understanding the rules, and this ain't a joke, thinking this is minor, nothing's going to happen. That this police is serious, it's a serious job. You can't have people fucking around, you know? So it's understandable, like I say. But for anybody that's struggling, brother, for anybody that's in a life of struggle, what advice would you have for them?
I think you need to, the first thing you need to do is tackle it, and you need to identify it first of all, because I think a lot of people won't identify it necessarily. But I think you just gotta, like what I did. I mean, I took the leap. You know, when I was struggling, I took the leap, and I never really wanted to be that person who had a therapist or a counsellor, but you have to do it sometimes, you know, and going through the NHS can be quite a lot sometimes. You know, there's a big waiting list. So I think sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet and just go private. And that's what I did. And I tell you what, she was fantastic with me, the one I had. You know, I only spoke to her once a month, but well, initially it was a lot more, but once a month. And it's just good. Like, you know, just the struggle, like you said earlier on, you know, I was never suicidal, but I understood how people could be in that situation. And I think it's really important that if you are struggling, you do reach out. You know, there's so much out there now. You know, this one of the reasons why I did the charity event that I did was because I wanted people to see that, you know, they're not alone. You know, there's other people out there that are struggling, and there's other people out there who are in a worse position. And I know that's very difficult to say to someone who's struggling because they only really care about their own, you know, they don't care about what anyone else is going through. They've got their own issues. But I think you've got to look at, there's always someone out there who's worse off than you. And if you can find that person who's worse off than you, it can make you feel better.
That's it, man. Like I say, we all make mistakes, we all fuck up. It's not the end of the world. You know, it's not the end of the world. You've clearly faced it. You're becoming a better dad. You become a better individual. For me, just don't be so fucking naive, you know? Just don't. It's easier says than done, no, man, because people can wither themselves in. You think it's only a bit of banter, it's a laugh, and before you know it, your world comes crashing down, you know? My brother, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, great.
Yeah?
Really good. Yeah.
Listen, fair play for owning up to it. Fair play for coming on and telling your side. Like I say, it's not as if you're making excuses. You fucked up, you made mistakes. Yeah. Listen, you're paying for it now. You've had to rebuild your life, you know, but it would have been even worse if you were in the fucking nonsense wing. There might never be any coming back from that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I think you'd have had a bit more protection with the screws, surely, if you were an ex-cop, you know. Surely you'd have put on a wing. It would have been more secure, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe people was getting out in their sentences for you to be in it. Nobody's want to cause trouble if they're getting out. But you would have got through it anyway, and no matter what gets through at you, you've got to overcome it. Listen, we're men, we've got to deal with it. Whatever cards were dealt, you know, I'm going through some shit, but fuck it. I know I'm strong enough to put my head above the clouds and go, do you know what? I'm here to fight, you know, like, it's just life.
Don't give up.
It's always going to test us.
Can't give up.
Where can people get your social medias if anybody wants to send you laughing faces or fucking ask you questions or send you pornos that they've got? How do people...
No more pornos. We've learned from that lesson. So social media for me, TikTok and Instagram, the two main ones, at the Heavyweight Gymnast. You know, it's all mostly my gymnastics content, but you know, it's if people want to reach out, if anyone's going through something similar, I'm more than happy to give out advice, more than happy to speak to people. You know, I've been through it now, so if there's anyone out there who is going through a similar thing, just reach out to me, and I'll do my very best. I might not be able to help that much, but I'll do my very best to help.
Could you ever get your job back if you start helping the coppers and start educating people where they go, he's learned his lessons, or is your job completely done?
Potentially. I don't know to what extent you could. You know, you get put, I'm on the barred list now, so any home office organisation or any home office led, you know, organisation, department, I won't be able to go for now. But you're on the barred list. I think you stand there for 7 years, but after 7 years, it might be 5 or 7 years, but after 7 years, you can apply to get taken off it, and they can look into that. And I like to think that with what I've gone guilty to, I could potentially have a case there. But actually, at the sort of the way I look at it now is actually, do I really want to go back into that?
Nah.
You know, I wouldn't mind doing it as a special again. You know, going back and doing it voluntary and not getting paid for it, and doing it like on a Friday and Saturday night or something. You know, if I'm sat at home and I'm bored. But actually, the way I look at it now is, yes, I do miss the job, but at the same time, I've had the privilege of doing that job. And you know, sometimes in life, everything happens for a reason, and maybe this is for a reason. Maybe, you know, maybe something was going to happen to me on duty that, you know, and that's the reason why this happened. You just never know, do you? Unfortunately,
for me, but looking from the outside, you'd have been perfect in the army.
I tried
because it's dark humour. You can have a laugh. You get away with a little more. You know, and they're crazy. Do you know what I'm saying? And they're doing mad shit. You're just a thrill seeker. You know, some for the positives and some for negatives, but I'd think, man, he'd fucking suit the army. Because they're all fucking dark humor. They're all off their head.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention it, because actually when I left the police, I looked at the military, but tattoos.
Foreign Legion.
Well, I suppose there's a...
Next level, that, man. Yeah. Listen, go for it, man. Cause mayhem there, and I'll get you on the podcast in 5 years. My brother, listen,
thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on and telling your story. I wish you nothing but the best for the future. Listen, you've made your mistakes. I laugh a lot as well. Just depends on the interview. It's just to kind of balance it out and defuse certain situations. Sometimes you might get a bit emotional. I'm just trying to have a good conversation where it's not too serious. Of course, you know, because it can be a very serious topic. Yeah. But I like to laugh at certain things just to defuse certain things where you go, okay, and it makes things easier. Yeah. So, like I say, it is funny, some of the things, but I understand it might not have been funny for you, but
we can laugh at it now. Yeah, at the time, not. But we can laugh, man. Life's too short not to laugh,
But like I say, I wish you nothing but the best for the future. All the best with your family, and take care, brother.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
Thank you.